Hello. Welcome to the live stream for, what is today? November. Oh, wait. Oh, gosh. What am I doing? Chaos. Hold on.
Welcome.
There we go. Oh, gosh. Okay. Yes, I'm here. I'm a little bit rushed because I totally lost track of time and I just made a cup of tea and I was talking and so I need to get centered for a little bit here. So I apologize for being late and I apologize for being in chaos so soon into this. But welcome. My name is Dana Morningstar and this is the weekly live stream. We normally do it on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I am leaving town tomorrow for a handful of days. So we're doing it a day early instead. So welcome. Elizabeth asked, did you guys change the time in the US? Yes, we did. I forget that some places in the world, they don't have daylight savings time, which that is phenomenal. Daylight savings time is just the craziest thing to me. I can't believe that it's so weird that everybody signed up to agree with that. It's just so, I don't know, it's so inconvenient twice a year. Okay. Well, true. Roberta says, well, you're not a day late, you're a day early. Yes, if we want to be optimistic about it, yes, then that's exactly what's going on. Let's see. Karen says, I got your ebook and started reading it. It's very insightful so far. Awesome. And I'm thrilled to hear that. It's been so reassuring getting feedback from people because you never know, like when you put something out into the world like that, if your message is going to land in the way that you intend for it to land. So the past week, I've really been waiting kind of on pins and needles, waiting for reviews to come in, waiting to hear back from people kind of in the support groups and here and everywhere else. So I'm really glad that it's resonating with people in the way that I was hoping it would. And the next step for that book is going to be to do paperback, which will probably happen. I'm going to say probably in about another week. I'm still waiting for like formatting and I think I got the cover designed right, but I'm not 100%. I don't know. It's a huge learning curve, but I'm working on it. And let's see. Hey, Pink Fire says, I love your videos. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that they help. Got lots of people on tonight. I was kind of wondering, I'm like, man, is anybody going to remember that we're doing this a day early? And am I just going to be talking to myself for the next 3 hours? But I'm glad you're here. Lucy is here. You made it. Yay. Shara, Janice, Megan, Tanitria, Roberta, Ileana, Kevin. Lots of people. Lauren. Hey, Missouri Cowboy made it. And I wanted to tell you too, I saw your picture of the sweet potatoes and you are like, no joke. You were not messing around. I have never seen so many sweet potatoes in my whole life. And I did not know that there were so many varieties. So very cool that you do that. And Shara says, almost 3 weeks on my own and I couldn't feel more relieved. Oh, good. Good. Lauren says, yeah, the flow of your book is very easy to read. It's a lot like listening to you talk. And Elizabeth says, yeah, I'm reading your book. Thank you for your work. And Lucy says, yes, I made it and your book is fantastic. Okay, good. Good. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad this topic is there's so much to it, and like, I guess really all the books that I'm working on are books that I kind of wished they're the books that I would have needed when I was going through all of this. And, my goal is to really break this down kind of step by step and explain it as clearly as possible. Because, after you've been manipulated for so long and after you kind of don't know and you start kind of coming across all these different topics, like you have a lot of questions and that's totally normal. So my goal was to try to cover that as much as possible. That first book, the Start Here book that you guys are talking about, that we're talking about, is it literally is a crash course, and it's full of a ton of information. I named it Start Here because I really felt that it was an important first step. It has a lot of the words, the concepts, the frequently asked questions. It's a good kind of foundation for any other books that you come across, or even videos that you see on YouTube or anything else. It helps for them to make more sense, because that's one of the challenges that I've had, is when you're in that kind of info gathering stage, you're gathering all these different pieces, and it can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're not thinking clearly because you've been manipulated. It can be difficult to tell, okay, well, I've got a lot of these pieces, but now in which order do they go in? And so that was kind of the goal of the first book. The second book, I don't know when it'll be out, but maybe next month. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of on a roll. That book is going to be called Out of the Fog. And the subtitle is something like Moving from Confusion to Clarity After Narcissistic Abuse. And it expands on a lot of the topics in the first book. So it really compares and contrasts, because I see people, myself included, get hung up in, what's the difference between like silent treatment and no contact, or, commitment and codependency, or, trauma bonds and love. And a lot of these different topics, a parent versus a predator, that kind of stuff. So I really go into a lot of detail about that. And I'm excited for that book. Fantastic. Anne says, today marks day 28 of no contact. I'm working it and feels so good. Awesome. Yay. And Shara says, my home is decorated the way I want. My living room is safari. And kitchen has chickens and cats, and my room is Paris themed. Well, I like that. And yay for you that you have your own space. And it sounds like you have really claimed it as your own. So that's a huge victory. And Maria, thank you. I'm glad. Yes, we need to touch on this. Maria says, Lucy, it's so nice to see you here. I've been really enjoying the last few months in this one's book club. You do a really good job of picking them. I really like this month's book on boundaries. So, okay, about that. I don't know. We got off track with book club a while back. Kind of long story short, we ended up having to change some stuff around. So we last minute, like as of today, decided on a book. It's still on boundaries, but it's a different book on boundaries that we thought would be more like, I think, approachable, because the book that we had on boundaries was pretty heavy reading. So we changed it, and it's on my website, thriveafterabuse.com, under book club. But I will tell you what it is here in a second. It's called Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship, and it's by Adeline Birch. It's right now it's $3.99 on Kindle. So yes, so it's another book on boundaries. We're going to be doing more. That was a conversation Lucy and I were having. We've had ongoing conversation we've had about wanting to have more books and conversations and stuff about us, and not so much necessarily about like the narcissist. So more on like healing and boundaries and understanding all of this, and kind of putting those pieces together for us. Because really, I mean, to have somebody else's pathology beautifully figured out, I know it feels really important, especially if you're fresh out of something like this, but it's really not. What's more important is to figure out what is toxic to you and how to know something is toxic for you, and to kind of learn to turn inward and to pay attention to your intuition and your emotions, and kind of becoming more of this authentic self that so many of us, that was either, suppressed or erased or kind of pushed down. But the good news is that authentic self within you, it's still there. It doesn't ever go away, no matter how much you go through. So it's still there deep down inside. It might take some doing to kind of peel back the layers of all of these messages and garbage we've been told over the years, but you can find it again. And that's, I think, a good use of our time. Let's see. Mel says, I made a decision to not attend a narcissist's funeral, staying away from flying monkeys and other narcissists within that family. Yes. Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up. We've had a handful of that situation I feel like that's come up quite a bit over the past month or so, interestingly enough. But, here's kind of how I think about it. I'm going to go to a person's funeral to pay my respects to either them or to the family, if I like that family. If I don't like them and if I don't like the family, then there's no point in going. Just because somebody died, it doesn't mean that you need to go to their funeral. I didn't go to my grandfather's funeral. He was a terrible human being and he was a predator. And had I known what a monster he was much earlier, I would have cut contact. If I had known what he put my grandmother through earlier, I would have gone no contact with him much sooner than I did. So and yeah, there's people in my family that don't talk to me to this day because of it, but so be it. I think it's important to, like to support the right people in this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, a lot of people don't get it. And there's this idea of, well, but it's their funeral or their family or whatever. And it's no, toxic is toxic. And if you had a good relationship with that person, because I think this is the situation that we've had a couple times in the group lately, is that somebody that they really did love died. And they were really torn as to what to do, because they're like, there's going to be a lot of, my ex is going to be there, or all these flying monkeys are going to be there. And it's just going to cause me a ton of stress. What should I do? And, my 2 cents on that was to think about, if it was me and if somebody cared about me, right? And if I died, I for sure would not want them to put themselves in harm's way to come see my body or to come bury my body. Like, I'm not there anymore. You know what I mean? So I think if you really love somebody, they understand, and you can make peace with them in a way that doesn't put you in danger. Like, you could see if you really want to go to the wake, or if you want to go to the funeral, like, you can always visit at other times. You can call the funeral home. You can make other arrangements. You can go to the cemetery on a different day. You can do some sort of ritual in your home where you just take the time to, maybe you write them a letter, or you talk out loud, or you see what I'm saying? Like, you connect with them in a way that gives you peace, and you think that in a way that honors them. So for me, like, putting yourself in harm's way to honor somebody that loves you doesn't compute. Like, there's something that's kind of off there. Virginia, newbie question. Am I the only one who struggles with feeling bad for my narcissistic husband? I blame his parents for all the damage, and I know he is a good person deep down. Oh, I think that's a very common question and concern and feeling that a lot of people have. I think it's one of the reasons people stay for as long as they do. They think, if I can just love this person enough that I can squeeze together all their broken pieces, or if I can just get through to them, if I can just explain things in a way that they can understand, then someday down the road, sometime, when, we'll be able to have this amazing relationship that I know that they're actually capable of. And giving up that hope and accepting a person for who they are today is probably one of the most challenging things for anybody. And it's really difficult to just realize, and it is tragic when you're like, yeah, I get why this person is that way. This person would have been better off if they were raised by wolves. The parents are just absolutely awful. No wonder. And it's tragic. It's tragic when you see that. You're like, wow, this guy or this person could have been so amazing. But, now they're this a kind of broken, abusive person because of this. But, you know, it's not about us getting through to them. It's not about us loving them enough. It's definitely not about pity. It's important that we don't confuse love and pity. Um, and to realize that sometimes people go through so much stuff that, like, he's going to have a lot of work to do on his own. And the stuff that happened to him and the decisions he's made since then and how he's processed all of that, kind of splits a person off. Like, there's two very different mindsets that tend to kind of happen from trauma. Like, we either feel very overly responsible. We become kind of an overgiver, which I think that a lot of us are here, where we think our love and understanding and patience can actually fix other people. Like, we over empathize with people that are hurtful to us. And then other people go the opposite way and they become overtakers, and it's all about them all of the time. They don't have kind of, they have this huge sense of entitlement, and they're incredibly emotionally immature. And it's they just don't have insight into kind of how to have a relationship with another person, like that side of them, that intimacy side, where they're wanting to work as a team, they're wanting to be accountable, they're wanting to be able to be, you have to be vulnerable to be in a relationship, to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. And those kinds of people, those overtakers where it's all about them all of the time, they don't have that. And there's a very solid chance that if you were to try to get them to develop it, it would never work, for starters, because there's a point in time where a person, like, your personality just kind of forms, and people over time tend to become more of what they already are. They don't tend to really change a whole lot. And if a person does change a whole lot, it's generally because they've experienced so much pain from their actions that's kind of been this catalyst for them to do something radically different. But the challenge with people that are these kind of overtakers or narcissists or sociopaths or psychopaths is they kind of get in this fight mode where they've always got their guard up. Which also means, they're always on the attack. Everything is always a perceived attack, especially if you challenge them, you question them, you disagree with them, you show any signs of individuality outside of what they think you should be. Trying to have a relationship with somebody who is so guarded emotionally that they can't let those walls down. And then coupled with that sense of entitlement, a person's not going to experience pain from their actions if they think that they're doing the right thing. And that's another big challenge with narcissism, is they really work it up in their mind that everybody else is wrong, that they're right. And we've talked about this before in other live streams where, the only thing I can kind of even imagine it must be like is, like, if you've ever been like really hungry, like hangry and incredibly irritable, and you're in the store and it's a Sunday afternoon and everybody else in town is there, and you've got people in front of you that are walking slow. You've got a lady, a 90-year-old lady at the checkout lane who's, going to write a check. And there's another lady that has like 400 coupons. Everybody's moving slow and you're in a hurry and you're hungry. It can be really easy to lash out and, take all that irritation out on them and feel like, well, I yelled at them because they had 400 coupons and were holding up the line. But we know, because we're adults, that even though we might not feel, we might feel that way, it's not appropriate, right? So, like, them having coupons doesn't mean that it's okay for us to yell at them. And so kind of along the same lines, like, so with a narcissist, it's that, oh, you forgot to buy kitty litter at the store, that's why I yelled at you. Or you didn't dress sexy enough and that's why I cheated. Or you were never home and that's why I cheated. Or, well, you know what, you didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher right and that's why I hit you. Or, And it goes on and on and on. And this is also one of the main reasons why targets feel like they're the ones causing the abuse, because there's always that kernel of truth in there. Like, well, but if I had put the dishes in the dishwasher the way that he liked it, if I had remembered to buy kitty litter, then the outcome would have been different. And the reality is, it's okay for a person to get irritated. If you forget to buy kitty litter, it's inconvenient, right? It's okay to get irritated at that, but it's not okay. Really, it's not, that's ridiculous to get really angry about. And it's definitely not okay to be abusive or to be cruel about. So, and that can really create this kind of really mess with the person's mind, because then they think, okay, well, they were raised by parents who yelled and screamed and were addicts and alcoholics and never there. And his mother was awful and all these things. And that's why he's doing this. And that might be true. However, there comes a point in a person's life where we all have to decide, what kind of person am I going to be? And it's kind of the next level of like emotional awareness and responsibility as an adult. Those excuses only hold for so long of, oh, well, I grew up poor. That's why I never, I don't know, whatever, like could have a decent job, or it's because my parents yelled that I yell, or it's because of X, because of X, then Y. But at some point we have to be responsible for ourselves and our own actions. And if he's got all of this kind of unprocessed stuff, then he would really benefit from getting in with a good therapist and working through it. It doesn't make it okay for you to be his emotional punching bag. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it's really difficult when you're like, yeah, I see it. And I see that little kind of baby bird with a broken wing inside of him. And it's hard to walk away from a person when we feel pity for them. But it's important that your compassion for him doesn't kind of undermine or destroy the compassion that you have for yourself. If you're having to kind of sink yourself in order to save somebody else, then things are out of alignment, and kind of things need to get back into alignment where you realize that you matter and that it's not okay for somebody to abuse you in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Pink Fire asks, I have a question. If narcissists don't genuinely bond with anyone and only use them until they're bored and then throw them away, then why do they decide to get married? Okay, great question. Because it's the benefits of marriage. And, a lot of times when you're dealing with the person who has that mindset of, it's all about me all of the time, I should be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, as much as I want. And nobody should have a problem with that. That's not an adult mindset. And when those kinds of people get married, because they have no sense of morality, because they don't make their decisions based off of kind of any guiding principles. It's only based off of what they want. They're very hedonistic. It's very much, what do they want in the moment? Ooh, they cheat because either somebody flirted with them, or or they found somebody else attractive, or because they could, or because they were bored or horny or lonely, or any number of things. So, they often don't have like any guiding principles. It's just kind of whatever they want. So they might get married because they want a house. They want maybe a dual income. They want children. They want to have their cake and they want to eat it too. They want to have a wife to raise their children, and they want to have a bunch of people on the side. They want the appearance of being married. They want the social status or public image of being married, or maybe even being like a great parent. They can really come across as incredibly charming and so devoted and so loving and all of these things, but really it's only because they want to hear from other people like how wonderful they are. It's any number of reasons, but if a person can't be vulnerable, then they can't love. They can have feelings of lust. They can have feelings of kind of intensity, but there's no depth there. And that's the problem, because it's just, fleeting emotions. Vegan Yogi says, my ex-husband cheated on me because the opportunity was there. He married me to hold up a reputation that he's normal, and he used me 100% for his own gain to lie, abuse, and cheat. Nafisha says, just finding out that my husband may be a narcissist. He's fighting cancer since 2015, now stage 4. Just found out he's had a double life for the past 2 years. I didn't know she existed. He blames me. Well, yeah, that sounds incredibly narcissistic, and again, very immature. It's that level of immaturity of, well, you made me do this. It's like, no, you chose to cheat. Lots of couples have issues in their marriage with communication, or, people not being home enough, or what have you. It doesn't make cheating somehow okay. If he had issues, he should have brought them up, but cheating doesn't solve anything. And, the fact that he's not even accountable for it. And this is what makes them so dangerous too, is because it's never their fault. And then they lash out when we try to set boundaries, or when we break up with them, because in their mind, it's like, how dare you? You drove me to cheat, and now you're going to leave me. You're so selfish. And it's just all about them. It's like that they're lost in a paper bag of themselves. It's just a blinding degree of selfishness that doesn't make any sense to the rest of us, because it doesn't make sense. And trying to be logical about illogical behavior is an exercise in crazy making. It really is. And I'm sorry that you're going through this, and it's not your fault. He chose to cheat. We all have decisions that we make, and that's outrageous. So, okay, let's see. Let's see. Kayla says, the cheating completely destroyed my sense of trust for anyone. He was so good at lying about it and blaming me. I'm still not sure how to get over that part. Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult when we care about somebody and we're being manipulated in such a way, and we don't realize that it's going on, and we're being blamed for it. It really messes with the person's head. I think, it takes a while. Well, here's the thing. Going through something traumatic in general is going to be transformative. Trauma is always transformative. And oftentimes what happens is it feels like we've been changed for the negative. Like you were saying, my trust in other people is really broken, and I don't know how to heal. What I've experienced personally and with other people is that when they're saying that I have a really hard time trusting other people, what they're often saying is, I have a really hard time taking other people for face value. And one of the big aha moments for me in all of this was realizing that my prior ability, or how I went about trusting people before, was like that needed work. Because I just took everybody at face value, and kind of until they proved me otherwise. And that was a big problem. So healthy trust with somebody, it takes time. It takes time. So, and it takes consistent, appropriate behavior over a period of time for that trust to grow. So whereas the old version of ourselves might have been, we find it, we come across a cute guy or a really nice person, and they seem really fantastic, and we just get caught up in this whirlwind where we just take them for face value, and it's so great, and it's, we're feeling some red flags, like something's off, we're glossing over it. And then it's these kinds of relationships where, boom, we find out something concrete. They were cheating, or they became incredibly abusive, or something happened that, and then we either left or we got discarded. And then at that point, we're just in shock of like, oh my gosh, what happened? And one of the big takeaways is to re-examine and to realize that it's okay for you to not trust people right off of the bat. And so many people go through life just trusting other people so completely. And that's going to take some practice, because here's the thing, like right now you might feel like I don't trust anybody, and I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to be around them, nothing. Over time, you're probably going to find that you're going to settle into like a new level of normal. So maybe your radar is more set to scan for problematic behavior, but you'll probably get somewhere close to how you used to trust before. The problem with that is if you get burned again, then it can really send a person into kind of this like almost paranoia of like, everybody's out to get me. I attract all these narcissists. What's wrong? And then we're kind of reminded. Well, actually, no, we're not reminded. We might feel like, men can't be trusted, or that, I've heard all kinds, and I've experienced all kinds of things like, oh, well, I'm never going to date a younger man again, or I'm never going to date a redhead again, or I'm never going to date, men might be telling themselves, well, I'm never going to date a younger woman again, or I'm never going to date, a waitress again, or what have you. And they start kind of linking up incorrect cause and effect, because now there's a pattern forming of all of these hurtful people. And the reality is, one of the big things in this, and this will seriously solve, like, it'll get rid of about 90% of the narcissists and problematic people in your life, if not more than that, maybe 95, is to go slow. So not letting them set the pace of your friendship or your work relationship or your relationship, that you set the pace of it. And you're aware of kind of what problematic behavior is, and more importantly, how it feels. And to realize that if something doesn't feel good for you, if something comes across as, uncomfortable, crazy making, especially those two things, like confusing, uncomfortable, or crazy making, 3 things, then that's reason enough to leave. Like, you don't need to stick around until you have concrete evidence that they're up to no good. Like, nobody's worth your safety or your sanity. So it's not worth it. A normal relationship that has confusion, it can be cleared up in like a 5-minute conversation. So if you're getting stonewalled and silent treatment and yelled at and all of that, like, just walk away, just save your time. Like, there's no relationship there, because you can't work with that. That's not adult behavior, and that's not an adult mindset. So, but with trust, so back to the trust thing. So part of it is learning to wait to trust people, and to go slow and wait until their true selves reveal themselves. Because everybody's on their best behavior for at least the first 30 to 60 days. Wait until their true self starts to surface, and be okay with walking away if it starts becoming uncomfortable, confusing, or crazy making. And then what will help you with trusting other people is trusting yourself to know that you can keep yourself safe. Because other people they have their own issues. We don't know, right? It's going to take us 30, 60, 90 days or so. Really, within the first 30 to 60, you'll see a lot of what you need to see. You're going to start seeing little strange things that surface. You're going to have that funny feeling that something's off. And if you can prove to yourself, you know what, I don't need to wait until they prove me right that they're an absolute psychopath. Like, I can leave up front as soon as they start saying some stuff that doesn't sit right with me, or they show me that they're not respecting my boundaries, or that they're arguing with me, or they're calling me names, or they're yelling at me, or they're just running really hot and cold, and realizing, okay, those are my signs, like, not doing that again, never again, that stuff's not workable. Okay. Micah says, yeah, the best advice you've given, in my opinion, is most relationship problems can be solved in 5 minutes. Yeah. If you're dealing with somebody who is solutions oriented, they're wanting to move towards a solution. Even if, let's just take an extreme example of that. Let's just say a person cheats and they're in a relationship. A normal person who cheats in a relation, and that in itself can be a deal breaker. Do you know what I mean? Like, the person doesn't need to be like doesn't need to have a pathological personality for that to be a deal breaker. If you realize, you know what, you cheated, I don't think I could ever trust you again. Like, things are really broken and I'm just done. Like, that's okay. Like, you don't owe it to another person to give you a second chance, like, or to give them a second chance. Like, it's all about figuring out kind of what your deal breakers and boundaries are. But let's just say, hypothetical situation, that somebody does something as outrageous as cheat. A normal person would ideally admit it, right? But let's say they get caught for it and it was a one-time thing. And they were like, you know what? I was on a business trip and they're telling you the story. I was drinking and I don't know what I was thinking and it just happened and I don't even know this person. I haven't been in contact with them since, blah, blah. Partner is devastated, understandably so. If that person was really sincere, and if they had a healthy degree of empathy, then they would understand that they broke trust big time in the relationship, and they're going to need to work overtime to rebuild that trust and to make their partner feel safe and secure again. So that's going to entail living a life willingly and eagerly and gladly, living a life of openness and honesty and transparency, and saying, I understand, like, you're going to want to have, you can see my phone anytime you want to see it. You can have my Facebook password. You can, if you're, like, whatever we need to do in order to rebuild trust, I get it. And to be open like that. This is also assuming that that's a one-time event and that there's no other prior pattern of manipulative or deceitful behavior. Because what happens sometimes too is, if you're in a relationship with an intelligent pathological personality, is that they will do all of that. And they will go to the nth degree to try to reassure you that, that they love you and that they want to make things work. But really all that's happened is they've got better at hiding it. I'd shared in a previous live stream, I had a friend once who was married to this guy for 15 years, and he'd had this pattern of cheating nonstop throughout their marriage. And she kind of kept thinking it was all these other women that were just, throwing themselves at her husband. And if she could just kind of chase them all away, then everything would be fine. And I feel so bad for her, but they had been in and out of marriage counseling, and he was so charming and just said all the right things and had said, you can see my phone whenever you want to see it. And he was going to therapy and all of these things. Well, then it kind of, long story short, it turns out he'd gotten his mistress pregnant. He had, he would plan on living this double life and not letting either woman know. And they ended up finding out about it. And, it was just, the level of deceit was ridiculous, but the pattern had been there. Now, this isn't to blame her, but what I'm saying is it's important for us to not look at their behavior as isolated incidents. Like, is this a pattern of behavior? Is what you're seeing here pointing to the fact that this person truly doesn't care, that they're not emotionally invested in this relationship, that they're continuing to lie and cheat and deny and deflect and blame and all of this? Because again, that whole, like, normal person confusion is quickly cleared. Because if they're working on the same side as you, they're working towards that solution. To me, that's and sometimes miscommunication happens, but it doesn't happen because of like malicious or kind of nefarious reasons. It happens because, you write something down wrong, or you're trying to get on the same page with kind of discipline or with parenting or with paying bills or what have you. But it's not, you're not talking, if you're talking character issues, lying, cheating, stealing, chronic manipulation, those kinds of things, that's not a normal relationship issue. That's a character issue. So yeah, and Missouri Cowboy says, did I say that infidelity is a deal breaker for me? Because he'd said it multiple times. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Yeah. I think the way I look at cheating is it's very much like Pandora's box. And the thrill of somebody new, the excitement, the sneaking around, the, just the emotional intensity that goes along with it, it really changes a person's brain. The brain it's all of this dopamine, all of these feel good chemicals, and it's fun and it's exciting. And it's, there's so much on the line and all of these things that kind of this pathological people tend to think when they're doing stuff like that. And I think it's hard for us to realize that it's something that's actually fun for them, and because we're so hurt by it, but it's fun. It's fun for them. So once you experience something so thrilling, if that's that person's way of dealing with boredom or frustration or, whatever, loneliness, horniness, whatever, stress, then they're probably going to keep, people tend to do that. Like it's the path of least resistance, like whatever's easiest. Some people handle those emotions and they eat, or they spend money, or they drink, or they smoke pot, or they, whatever. But if that's their way of handling a lot of things in life is by cheating, then, they're not going to stop doing that anytime soon. And it really upsets me when I see a lot of stuff about like sex addiction and kind of pathologizing, character issues, so it's like, because a lot of people were like, oh, well, I'm just a sex addict and that's what it is. It's like, well, is it? Because, there's lots of people out there that are addicted to lots of different things, and they don't lie and manipulate and have this pattern of just like destroying other people around them. So I don't know. To me, it's not an addiction. It's not a pathology. It's a character issue. Ooh, that's a good one. Vegan Yogi says, Dana, how do I teach boundaries to my 5-year-old niece? Great question. And I think that's a great age to start teaching this stuff. So I would start talking to her in a very kind of age appropriate way about her feelings. So one of the best ways that we can tell if our boundaries have been crossed is by paying attention to how we feel. So when a boundary has been violated, one of the first feelings we have is resentment. And, or for maybe children that age, they might jump straight to hurt, anger, or sadness. Like they might just start crying. If you take their toy away, then it's a boundary violation, like that's theirs. And so then they're really hurt by that. So starting with kind of role modeling or even role playing this about kind of what are healthy boundaries. There's a link down below. Let me make sure it's still there. Yes. In the description, thriveafterabuse.com/ and then it's all hyphenated. What -are hyphenated healthy -boundaries. And there's an article that I wrote that expands on, I forget who, yikes. It says in the article that I wrote about boundaries, and it gives like little like Venn diagrams of circles and kind of what's healthy and like, it just really explains it. But I would say start off by, you could do different examples with maybe things, you could even start with people. Like, okay, how do you feel around people? Start with people that she's comfortable with, So like, if she's really comfortable with you, how does she feel? Does she feel safe? Does she feel like it's fun? Does she feel calm? And maybe because little kids don't have like kind of a, well, I mean, they do, but they're not fully developed. Like they don't have a full emotional spectrum. Like they tend to have just a few kind of major emotions. And to explain, okay, how does this make you feel? You know, how do you feel? Maybe have her act it out. How does it feel when you're angry? How does it feel when you're irritated? How does it feel when somebody hurts your feelings or when somebody takes something that's yours? Or, and how does it feel when you're with your best friend? These kinds of things. And so then getting her in tune with that. And then I think one of the biggest challenges that as adults we have is letting that child kind of assert those feelings. So if they're not comfortable around great grandma because she's, 104, and that's scary when you're 5, when somebody's that old, right? So like if she's scared of great grandma and doesn't really want to go give her a kiss on the cheek, to honor that and be like, that's okay. You know what? Maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe you can smile and wave and kind of give alternatives, right? And of course, you're going to have other family members that are going to tell you that you're being mean or rude or whatever. And she's not comfortable with that, and that's okay. If somebody touches her in a way that makes her feel uncomfortable, that she doesn't need to go sit on, Uncle Larry's lap if she's not comfortable with Uncle Larry. Just because a person's family doesn't mean that they just get a free pass to kiss and hug and, cuddle and touch a person at any age. It's okay. So kind of, and that kind of stuff you might too want to talk to the parents about, because again, we talk so much about stranger danger, but it's really not strangers 9 times out of 10 that are the problem. It tends to be family. And it tends to be the fact that we can often find ourselves in really dangerous situations if we're not honoring our feelings of when something's off. So it's, getting in tune with that kind of stuff early, because so many of us were taught to get out of tune with that. Well, don't be silly. That's great grandma. Just go give her a kiss. And then you feel bad. Like, okay, I'm a jerk for not wanting to go kiss great grandma. Right. Or, oh, I'm being a hurtful jerk if I don't want to go sit on Uncle Larry's lap. Or because everybody's making a kid feel bad for not doing what they want them to do. So, and then talking about maybe other ways that she can become more comfortable with stuff. But I would really instill in her, if you feel like something's really off, that you feel like really uncomfortable, that it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about being nice. Like it's okay to cross the street if somebody's, if you've got a creepy vibe. It's okay to go tell mom and dad. It's okay to, to tell me. It's okay to, to not put yourself in harm's way, and, and to let an adult, especially at that age, to let an adult know kind of what's going on. Oh, good. Malta says, thank you for your book, the Start Here book. I was up to get it, and Amazon changed the price at midnight Pacific time. Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't sure when they were going to change it. The content is very relevant and informative. Fantastic. So it's seriously such a relief to just hear that. And it's been so fun. I think that book has 3 reviews so far. And so I don't know. I just, I get the biggest kick out of the internet. I know I say this all the time, but it's just so fascinating to me. And it's fun to kind of see people in one area, like on YouTube, and then you see them again on Amazon, and then you see them again on Facebook, and you just kind of start bumping into them around these different corners of the internet. It's just kind of, it never gets old for me. Like it's just really entertaining. So, thank you guys so much for the reviews that have been left. They really mean a lot to me, and it helps other people to find the book. So, and by all means, write an honest review. It's okay. So if there's anything that you would have changed or done different, please put it in the review or let me know so I can see about maybe needing to reframe or reword some stuff for next time. Yeah, Sue says, yes, I've discussed narcissism with my son. I think it's a big thing. And that's another great point that you bring up is we oftentimes might think we don't explain this stuff enough to men either. It's not taught to little girls, and it's definitely not taught to little boys. And I don't remember what I was doing. If it was an article I read, or I think it was probably an article I read about, kind of situational awareness and sexual abuse. And this gal was saying that she was teaching a class on it. And it was a class of men and women. And she said, okay, guys, what do you guys do to prevent to try to prevent being sexually assaulted? And a lot of the men in the class they kind of just giggled and, kind of laughed it off. Like, what do you mean? And then she'd ask the women, okay, ladies, what do you guys do? And she began writing it all down on the board. I park under, in a well-lit area at night. I always have my keys out as I'm walking to my car. I carry mace on me. I don't walk down dark alleyways. I walk out to my car with a coworker. If I'm scared, if I'm in a parking garage, I make sure I'm on the phone with somebody and that somebody knows where I'm at. I call a person or I text a person. If I'm going to go on a date, I let them know where I'm going to go and I'll text them when I get back. And it's just all of these things that women do. And the men in the class were just shocked because that was not a reality that they had been kind of indoctrinated into. But this kind of stuff can happen to men too. And so it is important that we talk about all of this stuff in a way, that in a way that's helpful for both boys and girls and men and women. So I'm glad that you're talking to your son about it. And, I think one of the ways that this kind of stuff slips under the radar for men is that really selfish and abusive women are, it's kind of chalked up to the men are either blamed. Well, what did you do to make her, hit you or yell at you or these kinds of things? Or it's chalked up to, oh, well, she's just beautiful. All beautiful women are difficult, or she's hormonal, or it's glossed over. And so there's a lot of guys out there that are stuck in really bad marriages, married. I mean, and here's something else that's really interesting to me. I was online and I don't know what I was looking up. And I, came across like narcissistic mothers. And it's so interesting. This is what's so interesting to me. So there are so many people out there that have dealt with a narcissistic mother. And you don't see information on narcissistic fathers. But interestingly enough, so you have kind of men and women that are in relationships, and it's known as, okay, this guy is incredibly abusive and, maybe as a narcissist or whatever. But what's so interesting is for the children is a lot of them are more focused on the abusive mothers. It's weird. It's like you would think that there would, if a child is growing up in a home with an abusive father and most likely a non-abusive mother, probably a mother who's running around trying to keep the peace, trying to keep things calm, that there would be just as many children out there looking up narcissistic fathers when they get older and trying to heal from that. But they're not. So why is that? Is it the words that we're using or what? But it's interesting because more children are able to more readily understand the the effects of an abusive mother somehow than they are an abusive father, I think is really kind of what it boils down to. I just find that really interesting. So, and I've had quite a few friends in my life that have had incredibly horrific narcissistic mothers, if you even want to call them a mother, monsters as parents and as mothers. And, that's, I don't know, it's really difficult to move past something like that. Yeah. Cindy says, yes, my mother is a narcissist and I had to move in with her to escape my narcissist. It's torture. She doesn't have my back. Dad is just a body. There's nothing there. Yes. Yes. And I think that's what tends to happen, right? When you've got this one spouse that's incredibly narcissistic, they just suck the energy out of everything. And you get to the point where you're like, they are going to say and do whatever they want. And I'm just going to try to become invisible because whatever I do is wrong. And so their spouse learns pretty early on, hey, if I'm going to survive this marriage and stay here, then I just need to learn to she's always right. And I'm just going to stay quiet and I'm just going to stay busy. Maybe I'm going to play a lot of golf. I'm going to be going to a lot of games. I'm going to be working 2 jobs. Like I'm going to get a job as a truck driver and just get the heck out of there because they don't want to deal with it. And, so men of narcissistic women do that, and women with narcissistic husbands tend to do that. Although I will say, I think what tends to happen with women with narcissistic husbands, so men tend, from what I've noticed, tend to become a lot more passive. They do become literally like that shell that's just there. The women tend to really work overtime and turning themselves into an emotional pretzel and the people pleasing. And they take a lot more of I think an active role in trying to survive that relationship. And when I say survive it, I don't mean necessarily life or death kind of things, but to not get divorced, to stay in that relationship. I don't know. Interesting. Missouri Cowboy, thank you for the live stream donation. Says down payment on an autographed first edition copy of Start Here. Well, thank you. I would love to do that. So you have to let me know what you would like me to say. Do you want me just to sign it? Okay. I can write something in it. I don't know. You let me know. I'd be more than happy to send you one for sure. Yeah, that's a good point, Angela. Angela says, because mothers have more of an influence. They just do. Yeah, I could see that. And I guess a lot of times mothers are home more often with children. And I guess it depends on the kind of, I don't know, male narcissists as fathers, from kind of what I've seen and experienced, has been more of just a blinding degree of selfishness, even though they might be abusive, but everybody can kind of walk on eggshells. Whereas the female narcissists, it's just, I don't know, it's a different level of exhaustion and domination, and it's just unrelenting. And I think especially for their daughters, it's nothing the kids ever do is right. Well, even for their sons, even nothing the children ever do is right. It's not good enough. It's, I'm very similar to male narcissists too. Children are just dolls, they're props. And yeah, it's very, yes, she says, yes, energy vampires. Yeah. Oh, little Mrs. here. Welcome. Okay, let's see. Oh, and if you are new or just hopping on, we are doing book club. We had a book club switch. So we're doing a different book club this month. And let me hop over to Amazon. It is called Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship. It's $3.99 on Kindle, or it's $9.99 in paperback. You can probably also get it at your local library. So it's by Adeline Birch. Birch is her last name. So we will be discussing that book the last Thursday of this month, if you are interested. And let's see. And Marcia says, yeah, with me, it's the other way around. My daughter is the problematic one. Yeah. Well, and then that happens too, right? And that's its own level. I think each of these situations has its own sets of challenges with it. You know, I think for a parent that has kind of a personality disorder child, it's a different situation. Nobody understands across the board, right? Unless they've been in it, like nobody really understands it. But they really don't understand it when it's a parent of a personality disorder child. It's this idea of, well, how can you be so cold to just go no contact with them? You know, what kind of parent does that? You need to give them another chance. What about forgiveness? Blah, blah, blah. And then the parent oftentimes feels this kind of crushing amount of guilt or, you know, confusion. What did I do? Like, what happened? Could I have done things differently? You know, all my other kids turned out fine. It's just them. And then there's this sense of responsibility of like, I don't know how they turned out this way. I feel terrible. I can't have this child in my life anymore. They're continuing to lie and cheat and steal and, you know, try to mooch off me. And they're, you know, 40 years old. And I can't do this anymore. Or they come home and they scream and yell and they cuss me out and they call me names and they're just absolutely awful. And, it's hard. It's hard for a parent. It's hard for anybody to go no contact. It takes a lot for a person to get to that point where they're finally like, this person's just obviously not going to change. And so I'm going to have to do something different, you know, and that's kind of the challenge with a parent, with a child, you know, what our bonds with our parents, especially our mother, it's our first bond. And it's really hard for a child to give up that hope and that fantasy of having a good relationship with their mother or with their father. And then, of course, nobody else understands because everybody else is like, well, hey, we've all learned to walk on eggshells. Like, why can't you? And the healthier that child gets, the more they realize, you know what, this is just, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, this is a done a dysfunction. It's not enjoyable for me. I'm on edge. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope every time I come home. Like, I need to figure out what I need to do in order to keep myself safe and sane in this situation. And then, of course, everybody else, oh, how could you do this? Your parents aren't getting any younger, you know, or, you know, they're sick. Don't you want to go home? You're going to regret this. All of these things. And then, of course, then the child, even though they might be an adult, feels this crushing amount of guilt. And even if the child is younger and the parent's incredibly abusive, you know, very common for the child to defend their abusive parent because that's the only mother or father that they have. And that's one of the challenges that CPS often has in foster homes, is because the child's like, I have to be loyal to this parent until the bitter end, because then I would have nobody, you know? And the challenge with, you know, a husband and a wife or a significant other dynamic is, if other people don't see the abuse, they don't understand how this is happening. Because for them, abuse is generally only a problem if the person's like in the hospital. If it's outside of that, if it's emotional abuse or psychological abuse or verbal abuse or anything that's not leaving like large visible bruises or broken bones, to them, it's like, well, no, that's just relationship issues. Like, you guys can work through it. You know, after all, they really had a bad childhood. Be more compassionate. And that kind of stuff really keeps that person stuck in that cycle. Very, very difficult. Okay, let me see. Let me scroll up here. While I am going back through these comments here. I just wanted to make a very offhanded comment about this tea. It's delicious. So I got this tea. I was just telling Travis earlier. It's this eucalyptus licorice tea off of Amazon. And I wanted to get some Aveda tea, but Aveda tea is very expensive. And so I thought, I seriously, it stresses me out thinking how much each tea bag costs. So like, I don't even buy Aveda tea, but every time I go get my hair colored, I drink like my body weight in Aveda tea. So it's so good, so good. And so I was on Amazon looking to see if I could get it on sale there. And it turns out, anyways, there is this tea. It's eucalyptus and licorice. I forget the brand. It's like, no joke, tastes like the Aveda tea. It's flipping fantastic. So just a little side note there. If you like the Aveda tea, but you're cheap like me, this is the tea to get. It's so good. Okay. Oh, Maria. Yes. Maria says she just realized she's been mixing up the Pete Walker book and Psychopath Free book. And she says, okay, yeah. So many of you have mentioned the CPTSD book. I must read that now. You are going to love it. It is such a fantastic book. And it's one of those books that, even though I take notes when I write, there's so much in there that I feel like I need to go back and read it like 2 more times. It's just a wealth of information and an absolute, just mind-blowing, fantastic. Missouri Cowboy says, no, frugal, not cheap. Yeah, you're right. Frugal with some things. My big splurge has been to get my hair like colored and cut when I go to Aveda. But you know what though? It's because here's the thing: is it's not a big splurge, because whenever I go elsewhere, it gets really messed up, and then I'm very sad, and then it costs me a lot of money to get it fixed. So it's an investment. Yeah, that's so true. Missouri Cowboy says, yes, we must rewrite our programming. Being reasonable with expenses is not cheap. So true. Maria says, glowing reviews get me every time. I will run to read that now. I am excited. You'll have to let me know when you're done with it what you think, because I think you're going to love it. It's such a good book. Kelly asks, how do we fight false allegations from a narcissistic ex-husband in court? That can be very difficult. I think one of the best things you can do is document. So what I mean by that is try to get everything in either text or email or voicemails, something that you can bring into court to verify things. And if he insists on calling you and talking to you, refuse that. And, take pictures if your child is saying something, or if he's, in trying to kind of just state a case of like, these are false allegations. This is absolutely ridiculous. And, and hopefully the court will see through the manipulations for what they are. Oh, good. Mariana says, I just left a narcissist. I've been watching your videos. You helped me a lot. Good deal. I'm glad. That makes yay. It's so exciting when I hear people kind of escaped the clutches of it. I had and I need to get back to her still. I had a mom email me yesterday about her daughter. And she's got a young daughter, I think 22, 23 years old, who's in an abusive relationship, verbally and emotionally and psychologically. And she's like, this guy is just absolutely awful. And, you know, the way he talks to her, the way he treats her is just horrific. And she's like, and I know at this point, she's not even telling me everything that goes on. And she's like, how do I help her? And it's so devastating to try to feel that level of like powerlessness that mother has. And so, you know, and I think my response would be, you know, see if she'd be open to joining. I think when a person can hear other people's experiences, that's when the light goes on, because they're not so defensive, because you're not talking about their relationship, but they can see it in other people of, oh, okay, they're experiencing the same thing. And so it gives them that validation and clarity that they've been looking for. So I'm going to email her back and see if we can get her daughter on one of the live streams, or maybe even in the support group, even if she'll only come in the support group for like an hour. I think she would get a lot of the clarity. It would at least, I think, pique her interest. So if you're on a live stream tonight and you've got a loved one in your life that's going through something like this, you know, please realize if you address their relationship directly, they're most likely not going to hear you, and they're going to become incredibly defensive. And they're going to tell themselves, oh, you don't understand. This is just how we fight. They had a bad childhood. They're going to try to minimize it. And trying to get through to them is going to be an exercise in frustration and crazy making for you. And one of the easiest, I think most effective ways is to give them, you know, links to different videos on YouTube. There's lots of us that speak on this topic. And if they can or encourage them to Google certain terms like gaslighting, projection, love bombing, I think would be like the top 3 would be a really great start. And so once they're kind of hot on the trail of like what's going on, odds are they're going to start doing more and more research on their own, and they'll be able to get that clarity that they need, and then hopefully be able to end those relationships. But it's difficult. Yeah. Katie says, yep, that's exactly what helped me to get out. I was hearing so many stories that sounded exactly like mine. Yeah. It's incredibly validating. Oh, so true. Maria says, oh God, I remember being so embarrassed by my own behavior, feeling so addicted to others and mentally obsessed with them. And I couldn't talk about it. My denial ran deep. Yeah, it's the denial. It's the shame. It's the, you know, we know that what's going on is a problem, but we kind of, you know, we tend to think that our love and understanding can help other people. And it's difficult. It's difficult for a person to walk away. And then there's all this, you know, we feel terrible. Like we feel like we're abandoning somebody who needs us, especially if they're telling us, how can you leave me? I'm going to commit suicide. You know, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm sorry. You know, if they're really playing on those, you know, kind of pity ploys, you know, nobody understands me like you do. And then they become very dramatic, and then it kind of creates this whole, like, it's me and you against the world kind of dynamic. And then the person's like, well, I can't leave because it's me and them against the world. And they can't fend for themselves. But the reality is they do just fine. They really, really do. Let's see. Somebody asked me, what was that brand of tea? And I don't, oh, here's my tea bag. It should say on there. It's Yogi. Let me look it up. It was so good. Let's see if I can find it on Amazon. It's Yogi tea. And pretty sure It's eucalyptus and licorice. Let's see. Yep. Okay. It is called Egyptian licorice, and it's by Yogi. It's delicious. And again, I don't even like licorice, like at all. And this tea is so good. I would have never bought it had I not read in the review that it tasted like the Aveda tea. And I thought, well, why not? So good stuff. Okay, let's see. Oh gosh, little miss. Yeah, what a mind scramble. Says, yes, my narcissist would try to shame me in front of his friends and say, can you believe she did that? I would tell them how he provoked me and they would side with me, making him so mad. Well, it's a good thing they sided with you in it because they could see it. What happens a lot of times is people that are kind of people pleasers or that try to be fair and reasonable and balanced try to approach these things of, well, it takes two people to have relationship issues. So what did you do? And then that's its own level of crazy making where a person's like, I didn't agree with, whatever. Like I had some sort of issue. I got upset. I asked him where this charge came from on the credit card, and he flew into a rage. And I see this oftentimes when people get into couples therapy and they're basically going there because their partner's abusive, and it's treated if a therapist isn't familiar with abuse, then it's treated as this is a relationship issue. So what's your part in things and what's their part in things, thinking that, but it's being treated like, if you had not done this, then this would not have happened, kind of thing. And that's not correct, because abuse, it's not about the other person, it's about them. And it's about them having issues with power and control and all the different ways that comes out. So if you've got a therapist that's trying to work towards a solution and getting each party to kind of meet halfway, then they're unintentionally re-victimizing the target of that abuse. And I think it happens a lot because some of the stuff, until you live it, like if you try to explain it to somebody else, it can sound like, oh, well, that, like, there's no way that happened. Or it can sound like, oh, you're just you're petty, or, oh, that's not a big deal. Or, it's somehow minimized. I saw that. I can't even tell you how many times. So it's really important to get a therapist that's super familiar with domestic abuse and, I don't know, to have individual therapy too, to deal with this outside of it. Bonnie says, marriage therapy with a narcissist is a disaster. Oftentimes it is, but then oftentimes it can be such a disaster in the fact that they are so charming. And if they are charming and manipulative, it depends on kind of where their own level of emotional intelligence is. If they're smart enough, if they have that self-actualization to realize that they come across as an arrogant, brash, ridiculous, entitled jerk, if they realize that, then they might know all of the things to say to come across as, I am really concerned. I've got issues from my childhood. I really want to work through them. I care. That's why I'm here, blah, blah, and saying all the right things, but then nothing changes at home. And then it's its own level of confusing and crazy making, or they can successfully, that's kind of more on like the sociopathic end, I think. Well, not even so. I've seen outrageously narcissistic parents blame their children for stuff, and therapists that treat it like it's a family dynamic issue. And it's like, no, you've got a terrorist for a mother, and it's not you, it's her. And get out, run, and don't ever look back, Okay. So interesting. Missouri Cowboy says, oh, the inner critic. I'm struggling with using gentleness and reverence to silence that inner critic. Taking a 2x4 to my head, silence that critical voice hurts. Yes. Yes. So true. It's, I think that inner critic is always there, and it does take practice. It's something I still struggle with, uh, when that inner critic surfaces, it's, I don't know. It's interesting. If you can try to replace your judgment with curiosity instead and examine, like, why do I feel that way? Like, that's interesting. Or, where did that come from? Or what could I replace that message with instead? It's very, very powerful stuff. But yeah, I think that inner critic, it's there. Okay, let me scroll up. Interesting. Okay, New Chris says, anyone got any tips for calming your attachment system during an attack? Nothing I can't handle, but I've got really anxious today. So I'm going to answer your question how I think that you mean it. But if I'm way off base, then by all means, please correct me in the chat. But one of the ways that we can handle an attack, because when a person's knocked off balance like that, it's really difficult to, a normal response to being knocked off balance is just, you're shocked, you're stunned, you're speechless, you just don't know what to say, you don't know how to handle it, and you're kind of in a panic mode. It's interestingly enough, like, this is a legit thing. This isn't just an abuse. It's in any panic mode. Here's a little tidbit of information for you. Did you know that when the 911 system first came out for like emergency response, when was that? Like back in the late 80s or early 90s? It used to be 911. They would say, dial 911 on your phone for help and we'll send help. Well, what they were finding was when people panic, they don't remember stuff. And so even things that they already know. And so people were panicking and they were looking at a phone and they're like, there's no 11 button on the phone. And they'd get so flustered that they didn't know how to handle it correctly. And so then they realized this and they went back and they're like, okay, it's just 911. A similar things happen with CPR. If you have to take CPR for work, or if you teach it or what have you, it used to be this whole thing of, okay, there's 15 compressions and 2 breaths, and you got to check, is the scene safe, and then you've got to check for a pulse for a minute, and then you've got to tilt the airway, and then you've got to check the airway for a foreign object, and if that's clear, then it's 15 and 2. But then if it's a child under a certain size, then it's 5, what is it? Yeah, 5 and 2, I think it was. And then infant CPR is one-handed, and there were all of these different steps for CPR. Well, when people are in a panic, they don't remember to do this. And the only way they do remember to do stuff like that is if they practice it regularly. So like in hospitals, they will have like crash teams that they train on a regular basis of like how to run a code, because other people, even if they're a doctor with 40 years experience, they're not going to remember, because people respond, our brains switch off when we panic. So just, I guess, to kind of normal. So anyways, so CPR now they've moved it to where it's just compressions only. Like, check to see if the scene is safe, but then you just start doing compressions. You don't check the airway. You don't give rescue breathing. You don't check for a pulse. You just do compressions. And that's why, because like you've got one step. So, so the point of that is if you're going to be in a panic situation, I think to realize that it's normal human behavior for us to shut down and to not think straight when we're in a traumatic situation of any kind, whether we're being yelled at, whether we're in a fire, whether we're in a car accident, or, anything. It's normal for people to shut down. So what can help is to practice your response ahead of time. So you can practice, okay, if I'm going to be going to court, what are some of the questions that they might say? Or if I'm having to still live with an abuser, then what are some of their most common attacks? Do they attack me about my weight, or about, um, my parenting, or about, spending money, or what have you? And then to try to kind of rehearse these scenarios ahead of time, so you're not so knocked off balance. Like you've kind of come up with some responses, or how you're going to handle that, or what have you. But it's very difficult to kind of develop a full plan when a person's in a panic. Kind of as a side note to that too, one of the things in my book, and one of the things that you probably heard me talk about before, is in any domestic violence person that talks about this, is they'll talk about a safety plan, getting a safety plan together. If you're thinking about leaving, even if you're not ready to leave today or tomorrow or next week, if you're thinking about leaving and you're like, you know what, I know this is a problem, I'm not ready to leave yet for whatever reason. I think they might change. I still love them. I can't afford to. I'm scared for whatever reason that you're staying. Working towards developing a plan. A lot of people, when that denial sets in, because what happens is when we're ashamed, when we know we're doing something that's wrong, quote unquote wrong, we hide it. Kids hide it, animals hide it, people, adults hide it. And so the problem with this is it's this level of kind of denial down the road. If we need to get up and out of there, then there's no plan in place, because we've been not wanting to deal with this stuff for so long. And so if you're finding yourself very overwhelmed, but you're like, you know what, there might come a day where I'm ready, willing, or able to leave, you can start putting a plan together now and realize you're in control. Like you can decide that you don't have to leave. Like you don't have to stay. This is up to you, um, like you'll have to be the one that makes that decision, but you can start formulating that plan. You can pack a duffel bag of some stuff. You can start putting money aside, in there, making sure that it's in a place where, they don't know. You can make copies of important papers, and you can just add to it. Just doesn't need to be a stressful thing. Doesn't, like when you can handle it, start putting that stuff aside. Because that panic and that stress sends a person into overwhelm, which then they do nothing. So it's better to do a little bit as you feel emotionally able to than it is to do nothing. Okay, let's see. Sarah says, I've researched all the signs, but can't find how to save my stepdaughter from being influenced by her mother, who's on a power struggle and treats her like a best friend. That's difficult. Is she an adult, or how old is she? And I guess too, it would depend on the kind of what kind of stuff she's doing. If it's really interfering kind of with her ability to, properly like set rules and guidelines and boundaries, like is she kind of just letting her run wild, or that kind of stuff? And if that's the case, would possibly going for more custody be an option? And there's lots of different kind of elements at play there. Oh, okay. She's 14. Oh boy. My stepdaughter's mother is convincing her of horrible, untrue things. So there's a fantastic book out there that I highly recommend anybody that's going through trying to co-parent, which is kind of a joke in and of itself with a person like that who's not team-oriented or solutions-oriented. But if you're dealing with a really manipulative ex, there's a book called Divorce Poison. Divorce Poison. Let me see if I can give you the author. It's fantastic. And if you go to my website too, Dr. Richard Warshak, Warshak. If you go to my website, my Amazon store, if you want to get it from there, it's amazon.com/shop/thrive after abuse. But my website, thriveafterabuse.com. If you go to book club notes, you can read my notes from that book too, if you're interested. But a lot of fantastic ideas about that, and talks about kind of how to nip those kinds of manipulations in the bud and how to do damage control. So it's incredibly difficult. I would encourage you guys to really focus on keeping that relationship with that 14-year-old. And she's probably not going to remember, because people don't, she's not going to remember what you say, but she's going to remember how you made her feel. So if you guys are really kind of doubling or tripling up your efforts with kind of creating these bonding moments, that you're out having fun, that she feels like your house is a safe place, that you guys can discuss stuff, that she's not put in the middle, which is going to be difficult because you're probably going to be really upset that her mom is saying all this stuff. To realize this house is a safe space, and we can talk about stuff in here, and not feeling like she's got to defend her mom or any of that. So, yeah, just, it's amazing. It's amazing how much it can help by doing things with kids, like going out, taking them out for lunch, or even out for like a soda and just talking, or getting your nails done, stuff like that, like little bonding experiences like that can go a long ways. Yes, I agree. Lauren says, yes, 14 is such a delicate age. It's so important that they feel loved, heard, and respected. Yeah. And you know what? She'll most likely kind of sort through this stuff on her own when she gets older. But I think I would just really stress that she doesn't need to take sides between like you or your husband or her mom or any of this. And, that you guys love her and that you want her to be able to enjoy her time there. And that if she ever hears stuff that is concerning, that she can come talk to you guys about it and leave that door open if that's kind of what's going on too. Oh, it is. Sarah says, yeah, I'll give it a try. Thank you. It's amazing what narcissists are able to do in order to hurt people. Yeah. And there is no end. Like they would rather just destroy everybody around them than like there's no connection there. Like it's just, they don't care. It's all about them. And their selfishness knows no end. It's like amazing to me when you can see, like, especially the pain in their children. Like you're like, how, like, I get it. Okay. Like you're not attached to me or you don't love me, whatever. I don't understand. Like, how can you do this? Not even to just your child, to a child. Like you're hurting this innocent child, especially when they're young. Like it's a 4-year-old. What is your problem? Like, how can, you just want to shake them because it's outrageous that they'd rather hurt their child to get to you than, be a decent person. It's crazy. Okay. Let me scroll up here. That's a really good point. Mariana says, they are such intense people that they make you feel addicted to them. And this is very normal. But the more you inform yourself, the more you will despise the person. That helped me. Yes. I think there's a lot to be said for information is power. So if you're new here, if you're new to understanding narcissistic abuse, I strongly recommend getting my book. I think that's a good place to start, but there's lots of other, the book is called Start Here. And my name is Dana Morningstar, and it's on Amazon. If you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, then you can read the book for free on there. But there's lots of different speakers on YouTube that talk about this topic. And I encourage you guys to go listen to a few, listen to as many as you want, but listen to a few of us, because I think that each one of us brings something different, kind of a different perspective, a different experiences, a different take on all of this information. And so it can just resonate with a person in different ways. But yes, the more information you learn about like trauma bonding and Stockholm syndrome and intermittent reinforcement and a lot of this stuff, the more it does start to really come together. And the easier it is to realize, I just got caught up. I just stepped in this person's pathology. Like I got tangled up in this. I didn't see it coming. You know, I thought other people were like normal, reasonable people that, you know, like would want to work towards a solution with stuff. I didn't realize that there are people out there that are like this. And the more you educate yourself about how these relationships happen, why they do feel so addictive, how so many of us confuse those intense feelings as that intensity as sincerity. And we confuse those, trauma bonds with feelings of love. Like, oh, I feel so emotionally devastated. My heart's ripped out and I can only think about this one person. It must be love. And that's not love. That's the opposite of love. It's trauma. But it's a lot of the same chemicals that are at play in the body. There's a lot of, that's the whole intermittent reinforcement, sort of like at a casino in Las Vegas. It's why people, well, for starters, it's why they got psychologists on board to help design the slot machines. It's interesting too, because if you've been to a casino within the past, 5 or 7 years, they've really taken them to this whole new level of like really wild intermittent reinforcement where you put, now you don't even put money in, I guess you do. You put like dollar bills in, and then it switches to credits. And then the game starts, and it's this whole like animated thing. And so you can quote unquote win. All of this stuff is just so fascinating to me. So let's say, for example, you take a turn on a slot machine and you play for like $1, and then it'll say like, you win, high score. Whew, it's like this amazing music, and like a unicorn comes out, and there's this whole like song and dance. And then you find out that you've won like 80 cents. And so there's this cognitive dissonance at play where you're like, I won. But then there's a side of you that realizes, wait a minute, I spent $1 and I won 80 cents. Like I technically lost 20 cents. But the whole time it's some people get addicted to gambling too. Like it's so addictive, and you just kind of keep chasing that high, especially after you do win, that it's hard to walk away. And it's the same thing. So the highs are really high, the lows are really low. And so understanding kind of that intermittent reinforcement. And so when a person actually does win, so let me back up. I think it's an important point to talk about. So with intermittent reinforcement, it's a term that was coined, who was it? B.F. Skinner, I think it was, with lab rats. And so he watched these rats, and what they would do is they would have them push a lever for food. And so at first, the little rat would push the lever and a little pellet of food would come down. And the rat learned, push the lever, food comes down. Then over time, they switched it up. And so then the rat would push the lever, and sometimes the food would fall and sometimes the food wouldn't fall. And what happened is the rat would continue to push the lever, thinking like it's gotta happen again, right? Like it happened before, so it's got to happen again. And it's very similar with an abusive relationship, because oftentimes at first they start off as really good. Especially if you're experiencing that love bombing and there's a lot of attention and you feel like you're the center of their whole world, and this whirlwind kicks up, and then things start to change. You can't live up to their expectations. You do things wrong. They're yelling at you. They're blaming you. But because the person thinks, well, but things used to be so good. And so they're pushing that lever again. I want the pellet to drop. Like, push the lever, the pellet drops. That's how it normally works. And it doesn't work. But true, like in normal human relationships too, normally how we treat other people is how they treat us. Like, if we're kind and considerate, other people tend to be kind and considerate back. But that's not the case when you're dealing with like personality disordered people, especially narcissists or sociopaths. It's all about them all the time. They are a black hole. Like, you can be kind, caring, compassionate, forgiving, and the more you give, the more they take. And so if you talk to people that have been in relationships like this, especially people that have been in it for years or decades, they'll tell you, they're like, I feel like I'm 100 years old. I feel ground down. I feel empty. I feel exhausted. I feel like a shell. All of those descriptors are signs of really of a narcissist of some kind. Hope asks, what kind of things do covert narcissists do behind your back? I think it's basically a lot of like double life kind of stuff, but it's really whatever they want to do. It's whatever they want to do all of the time. Cheating, lying, stealing, manipulating, falsifying documents, getting other people pregnant, getting pregnant, draining bank accounts, opening up credit cards that you don't know about, cell phones you don't know about. The whole thing with the covert narcissist is that their behavior it's on the sly like that. It's oftentimes very subtle. Like Bill Cosby, like they can come across as the world's greatest person, but then be living a radically different life where they, I don't know what the dynamic was between him and his wife, but and this has been known to be a thing too with like certain serial killers, where they have this persona that they want to have, and so they're married, they might have kids, and seem like a really great normal person. But then they have this whole double life where they, rape and murder and do, steal. Like Bernie Madoff is another example. They do all kinds of stuff behind the scenes, and then their family is just horrified. They never saw it coming. So, Vegan Yogi says, Dana, are you okay? You seem overwhelmed today. Are you taking time for yourself? Well, thank you for asking. I've been yeah, today has been really wild. Today has been a very busy day, and I'm going out of town for the next few days with some friends, and really looking, and I'll still, like, I never really take a day off from this, but it'll be nice to be around in another environment and out of town for a little bit. And yeah, it's always recharging, just kind of change of scenery. But I have been better. I go to yoga every Sunday now, which is, I love. That is 100% my time, and I love it. 90 minutes, and yeah, making more time for that. It's huge. I would encourage you guys to do the same. Like, it's, important to make self-care a priority. Oh boy, Mariana says, the first huge red flag to me was his sexual behavior. He would say he would rape me and get me pregnant. Wow. Is that typical of a narcissist, saying those kinds of things? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've ever necessarily heard that. They've done things like that. I think when anybody's operating from that kind of standpoint of, it's me at the expense of you, right? Like I'm going to get my needs met at the expense of you. It's at the expense of your safety or your sanity. Then you're dealing with you're dealing with a narcissist. So normal people would never say something like that. Like that's never funny, right? And a normal person would never think that that would be a way to be intimate with another person. You don't obviously, here's the thing too, is like normal, decent people, you don't have to explain to them why things like that are wrong. We don't, it's not okay to rape a person. It's not okay to get another person intentionally pregnant. Like that's sexual assault. Like it's not okay for you to joke about raping somebody or murdering somebody or kidnapping somebody or poisoning their dog or, that kind of, it's not funny. And a lot of times they'll chalk it up to like, oh, I'm just joking. And here's the thing too, a normal person, let's just say a normal person has a dark sense of humor like that. If you were to tell them, first off, I would steer clear of anybody that says anything like that, even if they are quote unquote joking, because it's dark and it's not funny. It's not even in the ballpark of funny. But if somebody's kind of warning you about their behavior like that, I am dangerous, I can't love, you should really stay away from me. I don't get attached to people, those kinds of things. Sometimes they will warn people, but then sometimes they don't. So it's not like a one size fits all, but that level of selfishness that somebody would threaten you, because that's how I take that, is the thing. But anyways, what I was saying, a normal person, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, a normal person has a really dark sense of humor and they say something like that. Oh, you better be nice to me or I'm going to, kidnap you and dump your body. And if that bothers you, right? And if you say to them, hey, that's not funny. And if they don't respect your boundary, and they might do something like, oh, lighten up. Oh, it's funny. You just can't take a joke. And they're fighting you on that, because that's what that is. That's basically saying, I don't respect your boundary. I think it's funny. So I'm just going to shame you or try to make you feel bad or guilty for not finding it funny. But a normal person would be like, oh man, I'm really sorry. Sorry, that was like a really dark joke. Not fun. Like, won't happen again. That's what we were talking about earlier. When there's confusion, because those kinds of things, whenever we experience stuff like that comes across as like, wait, what? Like a normal person would never threaten rape or murder or getting somebody intentionally pregnant or something like that. It starts off as confusion. It's that feeling of, wait, did I just hear you right? What did you just say? It's because it's that cognitive dissonance. It catches us so off balance that our brain's trying to kind of process this and to think like, surely they didn't say something like that. But then if they follow it up with, oh, I was joking or what have you, to take that kind of stuff seriously, because people don't joke about that. They shouldn't be joking about that. And if it bothers you, it bothers you at the end of the day. Yeah. Bonnie says, yeah, my narc would say to me, I can break your neck so easily. And then when I acted offended, he would say, oh, you can't take a joke. He is sick and dark. And that's the thing, is it's not a joke. It's a thinly veiled threat. And again, like, it goes back to boundaries. Like, let's just say that is his sense of humor. If you were to say, well, I can take a joke all day long, I don't find that joke funny. So don't joke with me about killing me. And then don't let them like put their garbage onto you and be like, oh, you're too sensitive. You're too emotional. You're such a woman. You're such a blonde. You can't take a joke. It's like, no, dude, I have a great sense of humor. Like, actually, I can take a joke all day long. That's not funny. So knock it off. And odds are they would go through the roof and get really upset about stuff like that. And that's the thing, is it's frustrating because you shouldn't have to explain to another adult like why that's not okay. If a 10-year-old were to say something like that, they would go into timeout, they'd get grounded, they'd be expelled from school probably these days. They'd be sent home because all the other normal adults agree that's outrageous behavior. You don't joke like that. Like just like you don't go into the airport and joke about there being a bomb, or you don't go into a school and joke about having a gun, or you don't joke about this stuff because it's not funny. So let's see. James says, well, wait, so them joking wasn't actually a joke at all? That's dark and evil and scary AF. Yeah, most people, here's just something kind of interesting. Most people in general, when we use humor, whenever we do tell a joke, it tends to diffuse tension, is one of the primary reasons people joke anyhow. It's to lighten up a situation. So we might make fun of ourselves. We might make fun of the situation. If you notice, like most comics that are really good at what they do, they tend to talk about topics that are not funny. And they put a spin on them because then it lightens what normally is a really tense topic. But the difference is if a comic isn't directing that at a specific person, because then it quits being funny because it's not funny because it's a personal attack. So it's interesting how people use humor, ourselves included. So, so it's interesting, pay attention to it next time you find yourself making a joke. Like why did I really say that? Especially if it's a lot of dark humor. When people use dark humor, it tends to be as a way to kind of diffuse tension in a situation. There was, one of the books that goes into this a little bit more, which I find fascinating, is the book, The Gift of Fear. And he talks about how people, they would get mail bombs at work, and people would say, hey, that looks like a mail bomb, sure hope it isn't, joking about it. And then sure enough, it was actually a mail bomb. Or they would hear what sounded like gunfire in the hallway, and they're like, oh man, I sure hope that's not John Smith coming back to settle the score after he got fired. And sure enough, it was John Smith who'd come back to settle the score after he'd gotten fired. So our brain processes, especially like scary situations, in a wide variety of ways that we can handle it. Like some people, you might jump out from behind a corner and yell boo, and then they start laughing. Like they get really scared at first, and then I start laughing. People will jump out at me. I scream really, even if they don't even jump out at me, even if I happen to like kind of turn the corner at the same time, it just absolutely scares me to pieces. And I get scared and then I can't stop laughing. And it's not funny. Like it literally terrifies me. It's just my body's reaction to that. So, but if people, it's sort of like how somebody else doesn't get to decide if they hurt your feelings. So like if somebody tells you something like, hey man, your ears are really big. And you were to say, or they were to make a joke about your appearance, right? Those shoes look like they're straight out of 1984, and they're laughing about it. And you're like, dude, seriously, like not cool. Like leave it alone. If they're like, hey man, just lighten up. I was just telling a joke. And if you were to say, hey, that's not funny, knock it off. Like normal people that are truly your friends would then they wouldn't even do that to begin with, but they for sure wouldn't do it after they knew that it bothered you. And if you tell them like, hey, that really hurt my feelings, you're teasing me about my ears or my weight or my grades in school or whatever, like And if they're like, oh, you're just sensitive or whatever, it's like, no, dude, like that hurt my feelings. It's not my issue. It's not my, like, you were being rude and it hurt my feelings. So please don't be rude again, you know? So but that's the thing. Like that's that kind of mindset where for them, it's everybody else has the problem, you know, in their mind. Hey, I'm just being honest. Hey, I'm just being funny. Hey, I'm just being myself. It's like, yeah, but you're being a freaking jerk, and knock it off, or we're not going to be spending time with you because it's not cool. Miss Luna is confused. It says, is it Wednesday? And no, it is Tuesday, but I'm going out of town tomorrow. So I said last week I'm going to do the live stream tonight instead, because I'm not going to be able to do it tomorrow. Shannon says, my husband and I are using dark humor to get us through this rough time. And that's another thing. So a lot of people will use dark humor as a coping method. I've actually seen this with people that have been raped. Like right after a really traumatic event, they might start. It's just interesting how different people process trauma. There's been a few women that I've worked with who had made jokes about the situation, and just really just sarcastic and dark. And it's not to say that they weren't incredibly, profoundly emotional about it. It's just that their brain wasn't able to go to that place, that they just couldn't handle it all right now. And so they were trying to kind of lighten up the situation. Similarly, I think it's maybe in a more relatable way, like when oftentimes you hear about people when they have cancer and how strong they are, and they have such an amazing attitude. And oftentimes what it is they do have that on the outside, but it's mainly because they are feeling so fragile on the inside that they don't have the strength to try to make everybody else okay with their cancer diagnosis or with their treatments. And so instead of like falling apart emotionally, which is then what other people would tend to do, right? Like if they start crying and start saying that they have a hard time, then other people are going to probably start crying. And, for them, they're like, I need people to be strong because I need strength. And so then it's sort of like this reverse of like, I need to be strong because I can't handle having everybody else break down around me. So it's, again, interesting. Let's see here. Yes. That's a good point. Missouri Cowboy says, yes, this is why taking a break, watching a healthy, light comedy can assist in our recovery. Yes, I agree. Especially if you're fresh out. And I get it because I was there too, but like there's probably, well, like even in my situation, because I didn't even think, it did not even dawn on me to go to the internet to really look up any of this. Like I was looking up sex addiction, and I was close, but like not quite. And it took me years to really kind of get that clarity. And then I kind of stumbled into a support group, and then everything made sense. And then when it started making sense, that was when I became really obsessive about watching YouTube videos and reading articles and reading books and really connecting the dots. But anyhow, but people that find this stuff a lot sooner, and they're already in that state of like hypervigilance, they tend to go in like big time research mode. And so then they feel, they're like, okay, this situation was incredibly painful and I don't want it to ever happen again. And so the only way for that to happen is for me to learn everything I possibly can about narcissism or sociopathy or psychopathy. And I really need to learn all of this stuff so I don't get hurt again. And then they spend, hundreds of hours researching and watching and reading and all of this stuff, trying to get a grip on it. And it can feel, and then they can get angry. Like if friends and family, or even if a therapist says, hey, maybe you could do something different. Like you're spending a lot of time there. Maybe we could talk about something else or go for a walk or, do something different. And they get really angry because other people just don't really, unless they've lived it, they don't understand. And, but I think it's important to realize that it can be really healthy to just put this stuff down for a little bit. It doesn't have to be long. Like it can be for, I would encourage you to practice putting it down. That you will have the clarity when the time is right. The pieces will come together. And sometimes there's a lot of giving our brain a break and feeding it with really good, nourishing stuff. There's a lot of videos on YouTube for like affirmations and relaxation and guided imagery. That can be really good to feed your brain. And taking time to go for a walk or to watch some comedy, and realize that it's okay to laugh. Like you don't have to wait until you're fully healed in order to go have fun or to go laugh. And that's a big thing. A lot of people feel like that's impossible. I feel emotionally devastated. And until I don't feel that way, then I can't, I have to totally fix myself before I can go out and start living life. And, the reality is it's sort of like you have to kind of go start living life in a safe way, at least kind of having some fun, which that might even sound like a million miles away right now. And I get that, but even something fun, like watching a movie, playing putt-putt golf, going for a walk, doesn't have to be, outrageous amounts of fun, but it can be something enjoyable. How about that? Enjoyable. You can do something enjoyable. It's when we start doing things that are enjoyable, that's a big part of when we start healing. So don't wait to be fully healed before you start kind of enjoying things, if that makes sense. Because you can put all this stuff down and you can pick it all back up again. Like you're in control. You're in control. But just, I guess, just realize that, Benjamin says, yeah, I researched a couple years while I isolated myself in a work camp up north. Yeah, Tammy, very right on, says, move a muscle, change a thought. Yes. So true. Yep. Shannon says, yeah, I feel that. I got to get it all fixed before I can get on with the life feeling. Yeah, I think it's very normal. When a person goes through something traumatic like this, your brain needs to process it. And it's a lot of information for your brain to try to sort through and make sense of. And but the thing is, our brain is like a computer, and it's always on and it's always working, and it's always working in your best interest, even if it feels like it's not. So letting it kind of, it's okay. Like your brain's is chewing on this like 24 hours. It really, really is. And it can be hard to just kind of like, okay, you know what? I really had to tell myself, okay, because I really felt like I'm making myself nuts. Like this is just I'm too consumed by all of this to focus on, okay, I'm going to go watch some stand-up comedy on YouTube for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I tell myself for 10 minutes. And then I can get back to researching stuff or thinking about this or what have you. And it was very much like exercising a muscle, because I would start watching that comedy and then another thought would come up about them or the situation or something that had happened. And I would tell myself, yes, that's very interesting, but let's put that down. We can think about that when this comedy sketch is done. And then another thought would surface about it. And I would, you try to be gentle with yourself and be like, yes, that's very valid. You know what? And I'm just going to put it down over here, and we can think about that more when this comedy clip is done. And then you just keep doing that. So you don't let your thoughts pull you in different directions. You realize, okay, I'm just going to focus on this for the next 10 or 15 minutes, and then I can focus on something else. Lauren says, yeah, I have felt like I have to put all my happiness on hold until I recover. Is the same true for making friends? Is it okay to make friends before you're perfectly healed? Yeah, I would say yes. And, it's the same. It's the same going slow with meeting new people and kind of just realizing that everybody's on their best behavior for the first 30 days. And, to go slow and realize people are going to be people. To not internalize it. If you come across somebody that's turns out to be, hurtful or hateful or what have you, to realize that's them. Their behavior is a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. You didn't cause it. You can't control it and you can't change it. Like, that's not on you. That's on them. And so all any of us can do is, if somebody turns out to be very different than what we thought they were, then we just figure out what we need to do to move ourselves to safety or sanity. We do the best we can do. So it can be really easy to get really down on ourselves and just think, oh, it's another one. And what's wrong with me? And get angry at ourselves and at life and God and all of these things. But it's a skill. It's a skill set, learning to view the world in this new way and learning to interact with it differently. The old us, I'll say me, okay? Because I don't know how your pattern was, but for a lot of us, it tended to be, we really got sucked in by people quickly. They gave us a lot of attention, whether they were friends, whether they were coworkers or relationships. And we really felt like, man, I really click with them. They're my new best friend. They're my new favorite work friend. They're my new, this new person that I, met and I'm excited about. And kind of, if you can feel that whirlwind kicking up, where next thing you know, you're spending all of your time with them and it's all that you really want to do. And you feel like you've really met this amazing person, that it's a good idea to kind of just take a few steps back and to really make sure that you have some dimension in your life, because it's very difficult for people, for any of us, to not get caught up in that whirlwind if we've got nothing else going on. So it's a good idea to have some activities scheduled. If you're going to be going, even if it's something like, I go to free yoga in the park every Sunday. And then I have a French language class I take on Wednesdays. And then I go to a CODA meeting on Thursdays, or just having some stuff in your life to where if this person were to leave, then you're not feeling like I've got nothing left. Like, they were my whole life. Like, they were my hobby and my friend and my lover and my whole world, all rolled into one. So to make sure that you're building up, that you're living a life that you love. And then here's the kind of the irony of all of this is, once you really build up a life that you love, that's when all the right people start showing up. That's when because they're your people. Because odds are they're interested in doing similar things as you. And so if you're out there being you, then odds are they're out there too. So then you don't have to really look as hard, because then they're just going to start showing up. So I would encourage you, go slow and, meet people, public places, have healthy boundaries at all times. And, and kind of practice it, because it, like I said, it's a skill. It's a lot like anything else, like riding a bike, learning to walk, any of this stuff. And most people, you fall a few times, but then you learn, and each time it's not as bad, because you're like, oh man, okay, that's because you can analyze the situation. So much of it makes a lot more sense because you have the vocabulary for all of this. You know how a problematic person tends to behave. You know how a problematic situation feels. You can trust yourself enough to know that you will move yourself to safety, and that your sanity does matter. And that if anything is, if it's uncomfortable, if it's confusing, if it's crazy making, then you're out the door. And that you're not going to justify it, that you're not going to keep giving second and 22nd and 422nd chances, that it's okay to have boundaries and deal breakers. And meetup.com. Yes, somebody mentioned meetup.com. It's like my favorite website. It's a great way to get out there and start living life again. And it's a group setting. Most groups are free, and they oftentimes have very low cost things well, I guess it probably depends on what you're into. But they have oftentimes really low cost things. Like in my area, there's groups for people that like to go do things outdoors, or there's foreign language clubs, or there's writers groups, or there's website groups, or there's entrepreneur groups, or groups for single moms or single dads, or people that have, I don't know, dogs that like to hang out and go to the dog park together. And I always encourage people, join like a dozen groups. You don't have to go to every single activity that they're doing, but it's can be a great way to give yourself options. If they are doing an activity that sounds fun, then you can go with them. And you can always leave. If you get there and you're like, this is not my crowd, I'm just not interested, you can always leave. So. Okay, Cosmic. I didn't get your question. Says, my internet cut out. I'm not sure if you were able to get to my question, but I asked, how does one deal with the loneliness and not being understood? Yes, that is a very powerful one. I think it's finding support groups. There's a lot, mainly online. There's a ton online, and realizing that, it's just one of those things. Other people just don't get it. And to find people that do get it, where you don't have to kind of argue your reality, and you don't have to, people just, they get it. And again, I encourage people, join a handful. If you're going to join online support groups, join a handful, because every group is run a little bit differently. There's a different dynamic. There's different members. There's, all kinds of different things. And so it's a good idea to join a few and see and participate in a few, so that's, I think, where most of us tend to go to feel validated, because it's its own level of crazy making. Like when you not only trying to explain to other people like what happened and why it's a problem, and all of this, but then everything that follows, because kind of the next stage is with learning to trust yourself again, and your judgment, and learning to examine your boundaries. Because even if you had amazing boundaries before, I guarantee that they need some work now, because a narcissist is like having a Tasmanian devil in your life. And there's a lot of reconstruction that needs to happen. So, examining your boundaries, examining your deal breakers, takes work. Learning to date again, learning to interact with people in a very different way. Like the gal earlier tonight was talking about, I don't trust anybody anymore. And totally normal. Frankly, that's a very normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. I would almost think there'd be something wrong with somebody if you were to go through something like this and come out on the other end totally fine. and be like, I trust and I love openly and I have no problems whatsoever. And I sleep 8 hours a night. And man, I'm just so glad they're out of my life. Like, that does not happen. That does not happen. No matter how bad the situation is, there's this period where a person like rehashes everything and they're trying to sort out, because you're dealing with the person that has two very different sides to themselves. It's kind of this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and trying to reconcile who are they really and what happened and how did I get here and how can I prevent ever being here again? And there's just all of these questions. So, and then to talk to people that haven't gone through something like this, you know, it's its own level of like minimization and invalidation, and a lot of really bad, well-intended advice is what tends to happen. And then the person tends to, because of all of that well-intended bad advice, and they haven't learned to trust themselves or to examine their boundaries and their deal breakers and get in tune with their intuition and their feelings and all of this stuff, then they tend to go back out and then they get tangled up with another toxic person. And then, then this probably keeps happening. And then they keep getting that same well-intended bad advice. And it's like, they can't figure out, and then nobody can seem to figure out what's so wrong with, Dana or like Sue or John or whoever. How come they keep attracting all of these people? Or how come they keep staying in these relationships? What's wrong with them? And nobody seems to know. But, there are answers to this. And, we can help each other kind of demystify the situation. And once you see it, then you got it. Then you can easily jump out of the way. I'd use the example before of the movie The Princess Bride, if you've ever seen that. A fantastic movie. But one of the scenes in it, Wesley and Princess Buttercup are walking through the fire swamp, and they hear this popping sound, but they don't pay any attention to it. And then her dress catches on fire. And then Wesley realizes, oh, there's always these signs that happen before a big problem. And so next time it goes pop, 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 and he picks her up and he kind of moves her out of the way. And he's like, we're good now. We can navigate this. So a lot of that is kind of with us. Like, we can identify that there are these preliminary signs. But again, none of us have been taught this kind of stuff. So you have to learn the hard way at this point. Hopefully that'll change in the next, few years or decades or what have you. But, those feelings that something's off, it starts off with confusion and then followed by introspection. Is it me? Is it him or her? Or do I have issues, or what's going on? And then kind of, so it's confusion, introspection, and then justification. And then there tends to be at some point, like the fire that we can't ignore. But if you can get in tune with those three feelings, that confusion, introspection, justification, and kind of nip that in the bud early on and move slow, then that's going to keep you out of harm's way a lot of the time. Maria says, Princess Buttercup. I love that name so much. Yes, I do too. Vegan Yogi says, you attract what you fear. I almost think it's more of like we attract. Our point of attraction is oftentimes either the relationship we have with ourselves, or it's our unmet needs, which tends to be at like a deeper level. So if a person, for example, if a person is, let's say they've been happily married, they had a wonderful childhood, happily married for 50 years, and their spouse dies, and they're incredibly lonely, and they might not even really realize how lonely they are, but they've never really been alone before, and they kind of feel like, well, this just must be normal. This is how it feels to be a widow. And maybe they start dating again. And next thing they know, they get tangled up with an alcoholic, an abusive person, a scam artist, some person that's not anything, maybe like their former spouse or not somebody they would normally ever date. And other people are like, what is going on? But it's because they are seeking to fill that void within themselves, to fill that empty bucket, that now they're ripe, they're incredibly vulnerable for that love bombing from other people. And we all know a lot of problematic people tend to love bomb. So, that's oftentimes going to be their point of attraction until they get that vulnerability, until they can fill up that empty bucket, basically. And this is why most people don't, like, if people that tend to get caught up with online dating scammers, it doesn't tend to be just once. It tends to be over and over and over again. And they have a hard time telling the difference between a problematic situation and a legitimate, interested person. They don't see love bombing as a problem. They see it as ideal. They see it as amazing, because it's like fairy tale kind of stuff. Like a total stranger is coming on so hot and heavy, they don't know you. Like that's not how healthy people operate. And so they're kind of misreading this whole situation, but they don't even realize it because, again, this stuff's not taught, and they don't realize that they're vulnerable, and they don't realize how, if they're feeling like something's too good to be true, or they're feeling confused or kind of introspective and wondering, maybe it's just me, maybe I have low self-esteem. Why can't I just let myself loosen up and be loved? This person seems so amazing. I just must have issues. Instead of realizing, like, no, actually this person's really problematic and you're picking up on it at a deeper level. Or they come across a really great person. They're like, what's so wrong with me? This person's so amazing, but I'm not attracted to him. And then they feel bad, and because they're confused by that. But really, it's like sometimes there's just not chemistry. That happens. Doesn't mean that you have a ton of issues or whatever. Just sometimes there's just not chemistry there, and that's okay too. So people are talking about a 50 Shades of Grey movie or video I made a while back. Yeah, that explains all of my issues with that movie. And there's a literary term in fiction called Mary Sue. And the character, so in the movie 50 Shades of Grey, same with Bella in Twilight, which is they're actually the same movie. Interesting. I don't know if you knew that, but 50 Shades of Grey was fan fiction for Twilight. And so it was the exact same story, but she just changed the characters and changed the situation that they were in. Both movies are problematic for the same reasons because of that, because they're the same. But the character of Bella, the character of Anastasia, is what would be considered a Mary Sue. There's nothing special, interesting, likable about her. And so in the movie, which is kind of, I think, the appeal to kind of the whole every woman, to all of us out there, because it's sort of like, man, this really hot guy, Edward, this really sophisticated, like intelligent, hot guy could be so interesting in us. And we just, in plain old us, right? Like, just out of the blue, we could somehow just be picked like that. It's the same thing with Anastasia. Here's Christian Grey, successful, he's handsome, he's intelligent, he's sophisticated, he could have anybody, but he chooses her. And so that can make us feel so incredibly special. But then the reality is, in both situations, the women, like, those guys weren't attracted to them because they didn't know them. Like, there was nothing that nobody is that enthralling that a person falls head over heels with them to that level. Not a mature, healthy person. Like, you might see a stranger from across the room and be like, wow, that is a really attractive person, or they might give a speech and you think they are so funny, but that's that initial attraction. But, mature attraction realizes that we still don't know that person, that it would take some time to actually be attracted to them for who they are. That's what I'm trying to say. So like in Twilight, Bella, Edward had even said in the book, and I don't think they really covered that in the movie, but Edward had said in the book that it was basically, he really liked how she smelled. Like she basically smelled like like a steak kind of, like her scent was so intoxicating to vampires. So it was really nothing to do with her. She just happened to smell like steak. So that's very insulting, right? That it's so superficial like that. And same thing with 50 Shades. It starts off, he's so taken by her, but to me, it's even, darker in 50 Shades because he's really attracted to, she's fumbling, she's innocent. He's attracted to her innocence. And that never ends well, because that innocence isn't always going to be there. And if that's the only point of attraction, that's a very predatory thing to be attracted to. So, and then the whole movie's like downhill from there for me. It's really disturbing. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Yes, Mariana, you got it. She says, yeah, it's the love bombing is so intense. Everything less than that feels so flat, and it's hard to fall in love again. Yes. And so that's one of one of the many things that we have to kind of reprogram our understanding of. Just like we were talking about earlier before, it was, we just trusted everybody until they gave us a reason not to. Thinking that we take people at face value. If we're good to them, they'll be good to us. And that's just what we do, because we are thinking that other people are like us and other people are not like you. They're not like us. And they are their own person, and everybody out there has their own set of like morals and values and right and wrong and, ouch, whatnot. So for us to not kind of project our own moral code onto somebody else. Like they are who they are. That's a big shift in like interacting with other people. And so then too, yes, the whole thing with love bombing, that's another big shift that we take, is because we tend to think at first, man, and it looks like, oh, this is so romantic. They're coming on so strong. They want to see you. They want to text you dozens of times a day. You want to spend hours with them. They want to spend hours with you. It feels like this whole soulmate. I've finally met my soulmate. This is so amazing. We're in bed all day, every day on the weekends. It's just this level of intensity. And it seems like something out of a movie. And because in many ways it is, and that's too, like, movies sell this stuff because it's the fantasy, but it's not these things. I have yet to hear of it ever ending well, and it's just, you don't give it a chance to see that person clearly. So it's a very sad phase, I think a lot of us go through when we realize that love bombing is not healthy, that it's actually a big red flag when somebody starts in on that. And it's a big sign to slow things down, which can be really difficult to do, because it's just this chemical flood in your brain. Like we really want to get lost in that and talk to them for hours upon hours every day. And we want to just jump into it thinking maybe this time it'll be different. And it's, 9.9995 times out of 10, it's not. It's another problem. So it's very difficult to slow all that stuff down. But, if it's a real situation, it'll still be there. at whatever pace that you want to take it at. Okay, let me scroll up. The chat goes so fast. So, Mariella says, talking to another person on the chat here, and says, also, you need someone who supports your decisions when everyone else guilts you. My psychologist supported me when I didn't want to see my mom at Christmas. Yeah. And that's a big thing because other people really don't get it. And this goes back to, it's your boundary. And you don't have to do the whole jade thing, right? You don't have to justify, argue, defend, or explain your boundaries. It's more difficult in a family because family is going to want you to do that. And then they're going to use a lot of guilt and pity and shame. And how can you do this? And, you're the only child, or, why can't you just get along with everybody it's only for one day. It's Christmas. What's wrong with you? I'm going to pray for you. I hope you change your mind. Your parents aren't getting any younger, blah, 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 blah. It's really hard to hold your ground and just be like, you know what? I am not going to be putting myself in harm's way anymore. So, and oftentimes what that means is starting to really kind of go low contact or no contact with multiple people in your family. Because it's like, this is my boundary. You don't have to understand it or agree with it, but I do ask that you respect it. Like, this conversation is not open for discussion. This is not open for debate. This is what's going on. So if you continue to bring this up, like, I want you in my life. If this family is the people that you like, I want you guys in my life. But if you keep bringing this up, then I'm going to need to distance myself from you too. And that's hard. People don't like hearing that, especially when they think, when they think, family is forever and that everything should be forgiven and that it's always about giving people multiple chances and on and on. So yeah, Joanne says the movie fakeness is so true. My ex-fiance flew me from Texas to New York City and proposed in Central Park at sunset in the fall with a 3-carat ring. Such a Hallmark movie. Yeah. And the ones that are all about kind of that whole public image, or they like feeling admired and they like getting all of that attention, do stuff like that. And again, it's so crazy making because to the outside world, your relationship can seem ideal, like, oh, I would love if somebody did that for me. But then they don't realize, yeah, the good times are really good, but my God, the bad times are really bad. And then people kind of think, well, but I think people that are in these relationships and then other people too, just think, well, can't you just kind of somehow make do with the bad times because the good times are so good? So if you could just focus on the good, no one's perfect, forgive and forget. Who are you to judge? That kind of stuff is that thinking that people kind of get caught up in. And then they, again, they stay in a situation because they're confused and it's a confusing situation. Like nobody thinks that they're going to be in an abusive relationship. Nobody thinks that they're going to join a cult or that they're going to get scammed or, like nobody thinks this stuff because we all think that we would see it coming. And when we're in the middle of it and when we have that unmet vulnerability, we're not thinking clearly, and that vulnerability is continuing to be exploited kind of inch by inch, that erosion happens. And the next thing you're in this really abusive relationship, or you've, you've shaved your head and you're wearing a sheet and you're trying to catch the next spaceship to, Arcturus or someplace because you think that you're some sort of alien from the fifth dimension. That's, you know what I mean? Like it's so easy to think that, we would never get caught up in that. But people get caught up in this stuff every day, and it can happen to any of us. And it's so important that we can kind of examine all our vulnerabilities. And and frankly, it's hard. It's hard when you're in the thick of it to see that anything's a problem, because it's just our normal behavior to continue to want to justify whatever we're in that's getting those needs met, whether it's an abusive relationship or a cult or a dating scammer or what have you. New Chris says, Arcturus, what have you been watching? Oh, I fall down so many holes on YouTube. It's ridiculous. You know what it is? I'm fascinated by belief systems, I think, in general. And, Scientology is very interesting to me, how people can kind of get to, because that's very far out there, but how does that happen? How do people buy into this? And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, but wow, like really, really, really far out there that, you just, I don't know. To me, it's just interesting. Like, why do people believe this? How do they believe this? How does this happen? And then trying to kind of dissect it and then reverse engineer it, like, okay, then what is the thought process for a person that comes out of this? Because that's more of like my focus is preventing people from getting tangled up in cults and abusive relationships and these kinds of things. But then also, okay, then when they're on the other side of this, getting kind of, basically it's deprogramming a person. So how do you get them to get them deprogrammed? But that's only part of it, right? So you've got to kind of get them deprogrammed and get the abuser, that control out of them, but then help empower them to then build themselves up to where they can find themselves. So, and then that's kind of its own fine line where, you're kind of like a training wheel, but then letting them explore all of this and then empower. It's the difference between like helping a person and then empowering a person. Because then I don't want them to think that I have all the answers or that somebody else has all the answers, because then you're just kind of back to square one again. So it's really important that when they start, that deprogramming happens, you're reinstilling that sense of empowerment in themselves. So it's just, I don't know, interesting. Let's see. Yeah, and Missouri Cowboy says, cults, cults, cults. Just like I bought into the love bombing of the covert, malignant, altruistic, somatic narcissist. Ew. Yes. But the cool thing is, once you have words for this, then it starts making a lot of sense. Then you see it coming. And then that's its own level of crazy making, because then really nobody else sees it coming unless they've gone through this. So, and that they've gotten into it to the level that you have. But it's, sort of like Missouri Cowboy was talking about the church shooting in Texas recently. I was watching a video the other day about that, and they were like, okay, this guy is mentally ill and he got a gun. And so then the problem is it's gun issues for mentally ill people. And I just thought to myself, I see that situation as completely different. I see it as he's not mentally ill. He's personality disordered, and there is a difference. So I think personality disordered people tend to give mentally ill people a bad name, for starters. But that was an abusive relationship, and that he was in with his wife and his child, and he was incredibly controlling and abusive, and they had filed charges, and he was losing rank, and he was losing his wife and his child. And that's when a narcissist becomes the most unhinged, is when they start losing control like this, because again, of course, in their mind, it's not their fault, it's everybody else's fault. And so, what does he do? Her grandmother went to that church, and I think she was one of the people that actually died in the shooting. So it was just sort of like, I'll show you, you hurt me so much by how dare you leave me? Yeah, I abused you. You had it coming. You deserved it. Now you leave me. I was the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm going to teach you. And then he goes and shoots up that church. And then either got killed in the gunfire from the, other guy that chased him down, or he shot himself. I'm not sure which, but to me, that was a very escalated domestic violence situation. And it has everything to do with, power and control, and a very person with disturbed character. And so, screening for, mental illness and gun control isn't going to solve the issue. It's really awareness of kind of that there are personality disordered people out there. But that's the thing, is like, oftentimes they can hide it pretty well. So I don't know. It's not an easy solution, but it's a domestic violence situation. Yeah, Bonnie says, I thought the church shooter was a major narcissist. Yes. Oh, yes. Respect says, can someone tell me why the narcissist blocks you even though you don't contact them? Is that just to make you think worse of yourself, or is it pushing them to make you think you're the narc? I think it's a little bit of both. Like, it's punishing, right? I'm going to punish you because you're so bad, you're manipulative, you're abusive, you're the narcissist. How dare you try to set boundaries with me? How dare you question me or challenge me? Like, do you see how twisted that thinking is? And, in their mind, they should never be questioned or challenged or disagreed with, or that you should be anything different other than what they think that you should be. And if you do start asserting your boundaries and saying like, hey, that joke wasn't funny, or hey, that hurt my feelings, or anything political, like they whatever, like they like Donald Trump and you don't, and you're talking about that and you disagree with something, and then all of a sudden you get the silent treatment, or they break up with you, or they they block you. And it's to make you think and feel like that you've been bad, you've let them down. I think it's very much a punishing behavior and a grooming behavior. But it really hurts in the middle of it, because you're just like, you've got to be kidding me. You're blocking me. Like, you just sat there, called me all kinds of names, tore me to shreds, and now I'm the jerk. Like, that's somehow I caused that, or that's my fault. It's outrageous. Okay, let's see. Postmodern says, yep. And yep. Yeah, it's exhausting. And yeah, but it's not you, it's them. Yes. Audie says, my ex would block me to punish me, to make me look psychotic to his new supply and his friends. Yes. they do things like that. So, or they will somehow provoke you until you text back, So let's say you question them. Let's say you find out somehow that they've been, liking all of these photos from some other girl, and they've been hiding their phone, and they're doing all this stuff, and you confront them about this, and you're like, what is up with this? Like, that's so not cool. Who is this chick? And they get really defensive. You're jealous. You've got a problem. Why can't I have friends? She's just a friend, blah, blah. And it's like, no, she doesn't. I've never heard of her before. Like, if she's such a good friend, let's all go out for dinner. Right. And they're like, no, you're controlling, you're psycho, blah, blah, blah. And you're not getting anywhere, because they're not trying to resolve the situation. They're just trying to do what they want to do. And they're trying to get you to get off their back. And so, then let's say, so they're stonewalling you about it, which is infuriating, right? Because they're acting like it's no big deal, that, they should be able to have friends, and that you're jealous and you're controlling and you've got the problem and there's nothing wrong with them, and blah, blah, blah. And well, how come you still talk to, your ex-husband? And you're like, well, it's because we have kids together. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, all of these just logical fallacies that they're throwing out, trying to state their case. And then, when a person finally snaps, because that's what tends to happen, where you're just like, you know what, I'm freaking done. And like, you text back and you're like, this is BS. I can't believe this. I can't put up with this anymore. It's exhausting. And, like, who is this chick? And then, then they'll take that text or that voicemail or what have you, and then they'll go show their friends, see, she's so nuts. Like, this was over nothing. This was because I liked my niece's volleyball picture. And of course, they change the context. So it does seem like, wow, she's insane. I can't believe, you know what I mean? This is, if it's confusing, if it's uncomfortable, if it's crazy making, get out of there. Like, that's not a relation. It's not workable. It's not workable. If you're dealing with a giant child, bratty, awful child in an adult body who won't take accountability or responsibility, and who has no moral compass for their behavior, and who feels entitled to use and abuse and exploit or neglect. Like, that's not going to work. Yes, so true. Maria says, games take 2 to play. Once I stopped playing, there were no games to be played. Yes. And I think that's its own challenge too, is not only to realize that it is a game, but to walk away from it, because I think it's kind of normal human behavior. It's so infuriating when somebody's stonewalling you and they're not being accountable, and they're not giving you that clarity or that closure, and they're just being so difficult. A person gets so mad. It's like, no, I actually want to stay here and fight with them, because I want to just get it through their thick skull that they're wrong, that they're the one that's outrageous, and that I'm not crazy for having a problem with them hanging out with strange women on a Friday night when I'm not there, and coming home at 4 a.m. Like, it's hard to disengage from that, but it's the only, it's hard. It's hard to let go of that. It's hard to just realize these people they're not going to see it. They don't have the emotional or mental capacity to be accountable for their stuff. So, yeah, stonewalling. Bam Fam says, what is stonewalling? And yeah, so it's mainly when it's like talking to a brick wall. And so sometimes sometimes they won't talk to you at all, which is more like silent treatment. But then sometimes they'll talk to you, but just not about that issue. Like they won't open up about who they were with or when or how or what happened or what their past is. And it's just, they just shut down because they know that they were wrong. They just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with, because they can justify it. So in their mind, they had reasons for doing it, but they just want other people to get over it. So they don't have to deal with you being upset is really what it is. They'll be like, I said I was done talking about it, or some sort of just crumb of acknowledgement. I said I was sorry. If you even get that. I said she meant nothing. Like, get off my back. What more do you want me to say? You're living in the past. What's wrong with you? We got to move forward. God, you're so negative. You just don't get anywhere. And, that's not workable stuff. And of course, they realize that it's not workable stuff. That's the other thing that's so crazy making. People are like, well, then we need to get into therapy. It's like, why? They know damn well that your communication's not working because it's intended to not work. Because if you had, so it's not like they have a communication problem. It's not like they don't understand you. They just don't give a crap. Like, they're not trying to work towards a solution. But it's, if you're not aware of that, then it really comes across as, well, we just need to improve our communication. Nothing wrong with your communication. There's everything wrong with their communication because they don't want to be accountable for their behavior. Because true accountability would be admitting that a person did something wrong, then taking massive action to change it and for it to not happen again. And they just don't care. Yep. Yes. Thank you. Crystal says, yep. And then on top of it, they lie to everybody about what's happening and then throw you under the bus for sick sympathy. Yes. And so then to add on to that story, right? So then you're finally like, you know what? I'm done. I can't be married to a person like this anymore. I'm taking the kids and I'm moving out. And then you do. And then they'll tell everybody, oh man, she won't let me see my kids. And it's just awful. And nobody understands. I love him so much. I'm going to tattoo my kids' names on my arm. And I'm going to talk about it all over social media and post pictures. Daddy loves you guys. And I'm going to seem like the world's greatest guy to everybody, except the reality is you're not paying child support. You're not making any effort to visit them. You're not. And then when you do, like, you're neglecting them or you're abusing them or you're talking crap or you're manipulating them. And then everybody feels so bad for him. Oh, give him another chance. He's really changed. This time is different. Yeah, Suzanne, she was mean. She stole all my money. She abused me. You can't imagine the horrors I put up with. She was so outrageous. I would go out with my friends and she was so controlling. She wouldn't even let me do that. And it's like, when you forget to mention that your friends, quote unquote friends, are, women that are half your age that you met on Facebook. And you know what I mean? It's just, it's always these half truths and manipulated stories. Ridiculous. Audie says, yeah, my ex did that. The tattoos, posting pics, saying I abused him. Yep. It's one of those things. It's like whenever anybody goes to great lengths to prove something, I always kind of think that they're the opposite. It's like if somebody were to sit down next to you and say, I am not going to steal your purse. You can trust me. You'd probably be really freaked out. Like, dude, why would you even say, like, of course you're not going to steal my purse, right? Like that. I wasn't thinking that you were going to steal my purse. Were you thinking that you were going to steal my purse? Or if somebody tells you, I just want you to know that you can trust me. I would never hurt you. That's a big red flag because, first of all, a person that should be kind of understood that you're not going to try to hurt another person. But also healthy, mature people realize that, you know what, I might hurt you. Like I might say something or do something that really strikes a nerve with you. I want you to know my intentions are good. If I do hurt you, like I want us to be able to talk about it. We're going to work towards a solution and it won't happen again. You know? So when people talk in absolutes like that, or like, man, I just love when they're going to these great efforts, I just love my kid so much. I would die for him. You don't even know. I think about you every day. Daddy loves you. Happy birthday, guys. Wish your mom would let me see you, blah, blah. Here's names of my kids, going on and on and on. To me, right away, I instantly think that guy is probably a deadbeat dad and is probably abusive, because those are the two main types of dads or moms that are either, it's weird, like they'll give all this attention on social media of being, you know, I see it with women in a different way. Like women will post a lot of pictures of themselves with their children, like going to it, but it's weird. Like they'll post pictures like going to a movie. But it's always like a sexy picture of them. Like you can tell kind of who the narc moms are. Like it's a good picture of them. And then it's just like an average picture of their kid. Right. And then plus the need to continually post that stuff on social media. People are like, oh, you're so awesome. You're so great. You're so, blah, 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 blah. Like, or people that are like, we're so happily married. I love you. I love you too. Wonderful. 3 years of marriage with my best friend. And they just go on and on and on Facebook. And I instantly think, I bet they're headed to divorce because people that are happily married don't feel the need to prove people otherwise. You know? So. Maria's laughing at me. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's true. Pay attention. People will tell you everything that you need to know. If you can see it kind of for what it is. Yeah, I agree, Maria, totally. She says, if I ever meet someone and they bash their ex, I look at them and I don't really believe them. A smear campaign is not sexy to me. Some men think you want to hear them talk bad about their ex. No, not at all. I agree. To me, it's a big warning sign of either, you know, male or female, either that, well, I think in a nutshell that there's unresolved stuff there. So they still need to heal from that, because all of that stuff is fresh on the surface, that they still need to heal from all of this before they're even emotionally available enough to even consider a relationship. And what I've seen with online dating stuff is a lot of like abusive men the ones that are more overt, that like don't have that emotional intelligence enough to realize to like not do stuff like that, they will say like, man, my ex, she was so crazy. I gave her everything she could ever want. Like I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She treated me like garbage. She even filed, false domestic violence charges on me. Or, if they're calling her names, or even for women, like, to me, that's just unresolved stuff. And for most men, that's been my main experiences with men, but that's been my experiences that they're abusive, and that it's probably not her, that it's them. So it's always, and this can be so difficult too, because if a person hasn't done the healing that they need to do, then when they get out and they start dating again and they go into a support group and they come across somebody that they're interested in, and they're like, boy, this person really gets me. They understand all this narcissism stuff. And it really seems like this is so great. We both understand each other. We both, we've had the same experiences. And then they start going out a few times, and then they're like, you know what? Actually, my spidey sense is really going off about this person. and they lower their guard immediately because they think this person's safe because this person comes across as, that they were abused, or, that they had an abusive ex. It's just confusing and all of it. Wonder Woman says, I almost want the ex-girlfriend to give me her side of the story before I ever get involved again. Yeah, I hear you. I tend to kind of I do a lot of research online. And I think it's important too to see people in a variety of situations. I think bowling can make for a really good second or third date. You see how a person handles stress, how they handle losing, how they handle kind of the frustration of getting it all set up, how they handle being on a team. You see a lot of different things or putt golf, same kind of thing. Any type of like team. Actually, no, putt golf. Well, unless you have a team. Do they get frustrated? Do they get impatient? How do they talk to you? Some of these early warning signs stuff can kind of come out then. Maria says, yes, bitterness in them means that they are in the thick of it. They really won't have anything healthy to bring to me, hating their ex or women in general. I agree. Yeah, if somebody's got like an axe to grind against, for women, like if it's against women and they think women, they're gold diggers, they're, man haters, they use men, they're just kind of all these things. They're nothing but trouble. Like that person's not open to being vulnerable or to even being in a relationship. Like that's not going to work. I think another good sign is to look at their friends, because really birds of a feather tend to flock together. It's really rare that you're going to find a person with no moral compass like hanging out with people on a regular basis that have a solid moral compass, unless they're totally duped. Sometimes that does happen, but generally speaking, people tend to hang out with people that are like them. You can tell a lot about if a person hangs out with a bunch of people that drink excessively, odds are they drink excessively too. If they hang out with people that smoke pot, odds are they smoke pot too. If they hang out with, sort of like the saying, you are the combination of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, or the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. There's a lot of truth in that. Like you can tell a lot about a person, like how much money they make, what kind of car they probably drive, what their hobbies are, what their, any type of vices that they have. If they have children or don't have children, or a lot of stuff, what kind of temperament they have, a lot by the friends that they hang out with. So it's a big red flag to me. It's actually at this point in the game, it's a deal breaker, because I look at a person's inner circle. Because when you date a person, you're not just dating them, you're dating their whole inner circle. So if their inner circle is their parents, their children, even if they're the adult children, who are their closest friends, and who else is in that inner circle. So if that's full, and so to me, they need to have they need to have healthy boundaries with everybody else in their inner circle, or else I'm out the door. So if they could be a really wonderful person, but if they have a 26-year-old son who's a heroin addict that's, living in their basement, and that they're paying all his bills, and he's incredibly violent and unpredictable, and you have a 6-year-old, like that's probably not going to work. That probably shouldn't work. So it's really important to not just see them, but to see kind of what are you signing on for? And it's everybody in that inner circle. And if they have a real personality disordered mother and they don't have boundaries with her because they're not comfortable with that, and she's over every single day and she micromanages everything, and she's incredibly smothering and controlling and manipulative and unpredictable and just too much, realizing, okay, he might be absolutely wonderful, but if he can't set some healthy boundaries around his mom, that's what you'd be marrying into. It's not going to change when you get married. It's going to get worse. So just seeing it clearly instead of through kind of the rose colored glasses of love. Let's see. Okay, how are we on time? I need to. Okay. It's 11:30, so we are already over because I have no sense of time. But actually, let's touch on this. People are talking about MGTOW kind of stuff. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Here's the thing. So MGTOW stands for men going their own way. And I think kind of from what I've seen, I think there's, it's a mixed bag of guys that tend to find their way there. But I think there's a lot of them that are probably, they've had an abusive mother, they've had an abusive ex-wife, or they are abusive themselves. And they kind of get caught up in this ideology that, women are, what is it? Like, hypergamous, that they're kind of biologically driven to gather resources. And so therefore, scientifically and biologically, they're going to use you for your money. And trying to think of some other talking points. That women are always looking to kind of increase partner status. So whatever guy makes the most money, that they're going to go after that kind of a thing. And misogyny, with that aside, I think it's really important for people to realize that people in general are driven to gather resources, male or female. So there's plenty of gay men out there and plenty of gay women out there. And, plenty of some women included, who have had straight male partners that have tried to use them for money. So it's not just that it's a straight female and straight male thing. It's whoever doesn't, if you're dealing with a person with no moral compass, who's going to use, abuse, exploit, or neglect their other people, mainly using and exploiting other people to get their own needs met, that's a problem. But they come in all genders and all sexual orientations and all of that. So it's not a woman thing. It's a problematic person thing. So sort of like the same where a lot of women are like, you know what? I'm done with men. I'm done with men. I'm just not going to date. Or if I do, they're just going to be a boy toy. Or if I do, or I'm just going to quit dating men. I'm going to date women. I think that happens quite a bit. And then they're shocked to find out that women can be abusive too. And oftentimes even worse, because they don't even see it coming. And so then it's just, again, they're kind of back to square one. And it's just this epic, mind scramble that happens. Phil says, honestly, I'm scared of women people. Yeah. Well, if you've had bad, it makes sense, right? If you've been burned by a lot of different women in your life, it's normal that you're going to fear that. It's like same thing. If you've been bitten by a dog multiple times, you're going to fear dogs. If a woman's been burned a bunch of times by a guy, she's going to start to fear men. It's very normal. but it's not, I guess what I'm getting, it's not the gender. That's the problem. It's the problematic behavior. That's the problem. And, do what you guys, people, what you want to do. Like if you don't want to date women, if you do want to date women, if you don't want to date men, if you do, find your own path, but please just realize that this kind of stuff doesn't just exist with women or with men. It exists any age, any gender, any nationality, any religion, any socioeconomic status, anything. It's out there. And so it's really, I encourage you to see the behavior for what it is, so you can protect yourself from it if it happens at work or with friends or with, in another relationship or what have you. So, yeah, Christy says, my mother was just as bad as my exes. It is not gender. Yeah, there's a lot of hate and bitterness there. And yeah. So, okay. Phil says, I can't date. I am afraid that they are going to destroy what little I have left. I am scared to make friends in general. Well, I would definitely encourage you to focus on, and that makes sense. That makes total sense to me. I would encourage you to focus on building a life that you love in the context that feels comfortable to you. So maybe that's getting some more hobbies. Maybe that's, I'm a big meetup.com is really a great way to go, because you don't need to make friends with these people. You don't need to stay any longer than you want to. It's 100% like your call with stuff like that. And if you do decide down the road that maybe you do want to start dating again, I would just strongly encourage you, practice these kinds of skills with like watching behavior and paying attention to how does it feel when something kind of feels off, and slowing things down and taking things at a pace that you're comfortable with. And it helps to practice meeting new people in like a friend kind of way. And again, meetup.com can be great for that. There's just all kinds of groups, running groups, French cooking groups, writing groups, what you name it. So join, if you get to that place, I would encourage you to go there. So, okay. Yes, Maria, I like that. Let's end on that for tonight. She says, the only person I totally trust right now is me. Yep. But you know what, though? It's a good feeling, because that's really where it starts and ends. And there's seriously so much peace that comes with that, because then we're not looking to other people to have to meet our needs. Like we can have boundaries for what we accept and what we allow in our lives with how we're treated and that kind of stuff. But our happiness or our sense of trust in the world or all of this stuff isn't dependent upon them behaving a certain way. Like they're going to behave how they're going to behave. And we're going to trust ourselves enough to move ourselves to a place that's safe. And we might be disappointed, but it's that, and we might have some hurt, right? Like disappointment, hurt feelings, but we can keep that disappointment, hurt feelings in a different bucket from our self-worth, and realize that it's not us, it's them. Like their behavior is a reflection of them. It's a reflection of whatever stuff they've got going on with them, not us. So, okay. So we are over time. Oh, well, thank you, Adriana, for the live stream donation, and says, Dana, I've been gone for a bit, but I am back and it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here for us always. Well, thank you. And you are so very welcome. I I really enjoy doing this. It's fulfilling beyond words, really. It really is. So, okay, with that said, there's a lot of more questions in here about how do you deal with narcissistic parents and kind of all kinds of stuff. But I just wanted to point you in the right direction of, or just a direction, point you in a direction of some other resources to get some clarity, like lots of support groups out there. There's one on my website, which is more private in the sense that you can choose your own screen name. So my website is thriveafterabuse.com, or I have a group on Facebook. If you're comfortable joining these kinds of groups on Facebook, just make sure that you're joining the group and not posting on the page. Anybody can see the page, but the group is closed. And there's lots of other groups online and on Facebook. So check them out. You can do a search for, like narcissistic mothers group, narcissistic fathers group, narcissistic parents group, narcissistic wife or husband or ex-husband or any of that stuff groups on Facebook or on the internet. And you'll be able to see a lot of groups. So, okay. With that said, we're going to do kind of a quick little grounding things. I've got to get to bed because I got to get up in the morning. So let's just take a moment to just kind of collect our thoughts and collect ourselves and just be in the moment. So just find a place that is comfortable for you, whether that's laying down or sitting down or whatnot. And if it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, then by all means do that. And let's do 7 breaths. So we'll do some deep breaths in through our nose and then out through our mouth. And with each breath, so to kind of get in our bodies and bring our attention to body awareness stuff, when you inhale, let's do this one. So when you inhale with this breath, send the air kind of down almost into your stomach. So feel what that feels like. So breathing into your nose, kind of blowing up your stomach like a balloon, and then exhaling through your mouth. Okay, and then on the next breath, breathe in and focus on filling up like the bottom parts of your lungs. So feel how your chest expands. You can feel it on the bottom parts of your lungs. And then exhale. Okay, and with this breath, breathe in and focus on the breath being in the top part of your lungs. So now it's the top part of your chest expanding. And exhale. And realizing that you can send your breath to different parts of your body, even more so than those 3 places. So if you can do kind of a scan of your body, think about, are there any places that are in pain, or that you're holding any tension or stress? Maybe your shoulders or your lower back. And with these next few breaths, send that breath to those muscles. And imagine those muscles just kind of opening up and kind of breathing along with that breath. So they're opening up and then they're closing. See if you're holding any tension in your face. Are you squinting your eyes? Are you kind of pinching them shut? How about your mouth? Are your teeth clenched tightly or are they relaxed? Are your lips pursed together or are they relaxed? Try to release all of the tension that you're holding in your face. Just let it all go. And send your next 2 breaths to any areas in your face that are holding tension. We're going to do a quick visualization exercise. I'd like for you to imagine a doorway, any kind of doorway that feels right to you. Maybe it's kind of one of those old-fashioned doorways with the curved door that's really intricate. Maybe it's very simple. Maybe it's like a doorway that you have in your current house, or a neat old doorway in a building that you saw when you were a little kid. Whatever this doorway is, it leads to a good place. So imagine yourself walking up to that doorway, and you see this kind of cascade of silvery white light. It almost looks like water, but you know it's not, it's light. And it just is the most magical, appealing thing. And you're just so drawn to it. And it's just pouring over this doorway. And then you realize that if you walk through this silver, white, wonderful, brilliant light, that it has the special ability to just wash everything off of you. All of the emotional tension, all of the stress, all of the anger, all of the pain, all of the hurt, all of the anxiety and the insomnia and the depression, all of it. And when you walk under this, you just come out a refreshed person, and so much of you is healed in the process. So picture yourself walking through that doorway now, letting that light kind of pour over you and hitting every single part of your body. It's healing and it's calming. It's fun. And now that you're on the other side of that kind of light cascade, when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and feel how much lighter you feel with leaving all that stuff behind. Okay, and realize too that you can do this, the doorway technique, anywhere, at any time. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious and you're at work or you're at home, you can either picture that doorway replacing a real doorway, Or you can imagine kind of drawing it in your mind in maybe like the middle of the room, knowing that that's your secret doorway and that it's very powerful and it's wonderful and that you can walk through it at any given time. Okay, so with that said, oh, well, thank you. Malta, thank you for the donation. Says, thank you, Dana. You're very welcome. So, okay, guys, have a fantastic week. I'll be back next Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you guys all then. So, you guys take care very much, and lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.